So good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the regular meeting of Midland Council. It's Wednesday, October the 6th, 2021. This meeting is being held virtually. It's being also, as well as being on Zoom, is being broadcast by Rogers Cable on channel 51 and the YouTube channel 53. I beg your pardon. I just asked for clarity and I made a mistake already. 53. It will be the repeated broadcast throughout the week if you are not able to see it tonight, and it's being broadcast through YouTube as well, if I'm not mistaken. Welcome. I'll call the meeting to order, and that's 7:01. And the first thing, order of business, I believe, would be the land acknowledgement. So if bear with me. The town of Midland recognizes that it is located on land which is the traditional and treaty territory of the Anishinaabe people, now known as the Chippewa Tri-Council, comprised of Bosley First Nation, Rama First Nation, and the Georgina Island First Nation. This territory is within the Pre-Confederation Treaty 5 and Treaty 16, and included within the Williams Treaties of 1923. The town of Midland recognizes that it is located on land which is the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the historic homelands of the Métis, and that our town is home to a large and diverse community of Indigenous peoples. Last Friday, we celebrated Orange Day, the Every Child Matters call to action number 80 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And I would ask that we pause and remember those children who never made it home, and also those who did but are still feeling the effects, intergenerational effects of the residential school system. So if you just pause with me for a moment and reflect on that. Thank you. Thank you very much. We'll continue with the meeting. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest with respect to the agenda tonight? I don't see any, so thank you. We'll move along to approval of the agenda, and moved by Councillor Downer, seconded by Councillor Cunningham, that the contents of the regular council agenda for October 6th, 2021 be approved as amended by removing item 10.2 CSR 2021-62 sign bylaw amendment -16845 Highway 12, item 15.1 Councillor Prost motion respecting parking along Cook Drive, and item 16.1 bylaw 2021-43 being a bylaw to amend sign bylaw 2011-79 respecting 16845 Highway 12. Council, you've heard the motion. Any comments or questions around the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you, and that carries. Next, we have a motion by Councillor Cunningham, seconded by Councillor Gordon, that the items and related recommendations contained within the October 6th, 2021 consent agenda as consent items having been considered by council be adopted. Comments or questions around the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, that too carries. We now have a motion moved by Councillor McGinn, seconded by Councillor Downer, that council resolve into the committee of the whole, and I'll turn the meeting over to Deputy Mayor Ross. Deputy Mayor. Oh, sorry, all in favor. Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Welcome everyone this evening. Tonight we have no presentations, but we do have a petition and a deputation. First is 8.1, a petition received from Mr. Lisi of 475 William Street regarding excessive speed on William Street. This will be received as information. Next up, we have a council's task force on affordable housing update and request for resources. Sorry, Councillor Main.
Thank you. Can I speak to the petition on William Street for a moment?
Yes, you can. Yes, you can, sir. What?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I met with Mr. Lisi last week, and he has a wonderful garden, by the way, Mr. Lisi, if you're watching, just exquisite garden. And I just want, he doesn't have email, so I met with him in person. And I just wanted to thank Mr. Lisi for putting the petition forward because it's a very simple asking that the speed of William Street be monitored for cars going excess of 50 kilometers an hour, which is a reasonable request. So we have some sign radars, we have some pole mounted ones. But I wanted to also comment to Mr. Lisi that we are looking at improvements on the William Street corridor as part of the Transportation Master Plan. So hopefully in next year's budget or subsequent capital budgets, we are looking at installing pedestrian crosswalks on the William Street corridor. Donalda was identified as one location, and we hope that Elizabeth Street at Sacred Heart is another one that is considered immediately. And also made a commitment to the residents on William Street that we are going to take a look at expanding the sidewalk network, at least as far as we can on the western side of William Street, because it only runs to about Jean Street. So there's several opportunities to extend that sidewalk south on the western side, just to improve pedestrian safety and try to take a complete streets approach to William Street to try to make it safer for cyclists, pedestrians, and road drivers. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Main. Councillor Gordon, you had a comment, sir?
Yes, thank you. About the petition as well, I just wanted to thank the residents that took the time and effort to read that and sign it, send it to us. It's unfortunate we're not getting sort of an oral presentation, but I think most of us got the gist. It was quite well written. I can recall for my couple decades with the local police department, that was a routine speed trap for us. And the funny part was it wasn't catching people going down the hill. It was catching people going up the hill. We used to sit there and turn into the diamond, the ball diamond, and just catch people. It was just a fishing hole. Like you could sit and write tickets there all day, people speeding up William. So this is not a new problem. It does require OPP enforcement, but I think part of this, speaks to the fact that it's a collector. I believe it's a collector. And collectors are currently not part of the forthcoming traffic calming policy. So that would really bind council's hands. It would prevent us from implementing any of the options in that new bylaw that we are waiting to come back to us. I've stated repeatedly, both before and during the meeting, that I'd really like the meeting on the bylaw, that I'd like to see all roads in our jurisdiction included in this new bylaw and not leave ones out of it, because we have residential and commercial in every part of the community that might need our help with that the new policy can provide. So as it stands now, and this is a frustration, the policy, the way it's currently drafted and enacted today, William residents would be on their own, when their only option would be to call OPP, which is still part of the solution. But I'd really like to see that draft policy, and this is just more of a ping for staff. When it comes back to us, we don't leave any of our residents, businesses, or streets unmentioned in that policy. So thanks for that petition. And I look forward to being able to look at some traffic calming options beyond the ones that Councillor Main suggested, which are all good suggestions as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? I apologize to committee for not asking for that earlier. I see none. We'll move on to the next item, and I'd like to welcome former Mayor Gordon McKay to our meeting this evening. Thank you very much for coming. Always a pleasure to see you. Mr. McKay, how are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you very much, Deputy Mayor. I guess the first question of all virtual presentations is, can you hear me?
We could hear you just fine.
Okay, that's excellent.
And I understand you have a PowerPoint presentation you're going to be showing us today on Council's Task Force on Affordable Housing, and you have a request of us. So I'll remind you that you have 10 minutes, sir. I'm sure you're more than aware of it, but if you need a little extra time, I'm sure we can give the former mayor a few extra minutes. So it's all yours, sir.
Okay, we'll try to keep to the time, but first, it's a pleasure to be welcomed again before Council. It's been a little while since I've been before you with a presentation on affordable housing, but always good to be back. I also like to mention I'm here by myself making the presentation, but both virtually and Zoom-wise, I've got Mr. Tom Cowley is also a member of the task force, as is your worship, and Councillor Main. And I'm also supported in this meeting by Mr. Dan Lebrecq, who is a consultant assisting us with this work. So it's not so much one person talking to you, it's the entire team. That is your entire task force. Could we have the slide change, please? Thank you. We're going to talk about affordable housing. And I think we all know we're not talking about housing specifically, we're talking about people's lives. We're talking about their well-being. We're talking about whether they can put food on the table. We're talking about the economy of Midland. So this is no light topic. This is one that transcends everything that happens in our community and speaks profoundly to the well-being of our citizens. And it's with that, and I've got to thank again council for this, is that the first step was taken back in June of 2020, when this council established its task force on affordable housing. Gave us a small budget and the challenge. And the challenge was to explore options for addressing the affordable housing needs within the town of Midland. Next slide, please. So there has been some work done, and I hope a few accomplishments. We probably appear to be very quiet to you. That is, no major announcements and such, but there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes. We've researched housing models across Canada, and this is one of the positive aspects, is there's many different initiatives across Canada that speak to how do we resolve the problem of getting more affordable housing. Locally, we can go to town of Blue Mountains, Orillia, Barrie, a little farther afield, you can go to Vancouver, Canmore, Calgary. It's not a topic that municipal councils haven't wrestled with. And the good news comes into number two, is that with all of these models and all of these different approaches, there's all sorts of good ideas as to what towns can and should be doing, both in the short term, that is to immediately relieve the pressure, and the long term, to build a structure so we don't have to keep revisiting the problem of lack of affordable housing over the years, which is something unfortunately we have had to consider for so long. We have started some of the work that we think we'll have to do in order to be successful here, and that is, most importantly, getting the public engaged. And to that end, we started with a survey through Engaging Midland. Next slide, please. So that survey was conducted through May and June of 2021. We had 141 individuals participate. I want to stop right there and just caution that this is not a properly balanced survey of all the residents of Midland. This was a survey put out on the Engaging Midland website. So quite likely the people who responded are the ones that are most interested in housing. That said, 141 individuals is a significant number of individuals to respond to this, and that's why we can have some confidence in these numbers as respecting the topic of affordable housing. As you can see, the top line number is 97.9% believe there is a housing problem in Midland. Now that goes across the board. It wasn't specified what that problem was. You can drill down in the survey, and I'd certainly recommend the survey to you. The summary was provided in the package to you as to what the survey dwelt into, and obviously there's numbers behind that. As people came to grips with what they meant by the housing problem, 96% mentioned affordability. There's not enough money in the household to buy proper housing. 96%. Availability was the second one. Even if you had the money, could you find a place that was suitable for yourself or for your family? And again, 79% mentioned this, just right up top, a lack of housing supply. So as you can see, it is a substantive problem. It is one that affects a lot of people in the town of Midland. And very, as I said, fortunately, council's turned its attention to do something about this. Next slide, please. So we've had our challenges as well. I don't want to present this. We've done a lot of good work and everything is running well. But just some of the things that we have run into. The first one is an unclear resource commitment by the town. This is not meant to point fingers at the town and said, how dare you? We, to be fair, have not really asked specifically. But as we go out and talk to developers, either informally or in various formats, the question is, well, what are you talking about? What are you guys going to put on the table? What's the direction we got from council? And to be fair, we don't have a clear statement of what we'd like to do. We don't have a clear understanding what land assets we could put on the table in talking to folks. We don't really have a budget. I mentioned the 27,000 that has been well spent and certainly insignificant when it comes to dealing with the broader problem. And we really don't have a commitment of staff. Staff has been very forthcoming, and I want to thank in particular Mr. Elliott in the early stages and Mr. Farr currently. They have been there, but there again, no firm commitment of staff. We've also been plagued with staff turnover. Again, this is something I'm sure you've seen in a number of different programs in the town. There has been some turnover. It has set us back in some of the work we've done. It has delayed things. And I do respect all of the work that staff has got to do. So I want to compliment them by saying this, but also recognize it has hurt the progress of the task force. COVID goes without saying. Many things have had to change, and it's certainly put a slow lane, if you will, to some of the conversations that we wished we had had in developing the affordable housing proposal. And lastly, a lack of municipal mechanism. As you will appreciate that if we're going to talk to the private sector, and those are the folks that build the housing, not the public sector, we've got to do this in a controlled and publicly acceptable fashion. So you immediately run into the Municipal Act. The Municipal Act says you need something like a CIP or an arm's length corporation to do this effectively. So we currently do not have a mechanism like that within the town to have a meaningful discussion with someone who can actually build housing. So bottom line to all of this, with those challenges, if we're going to assist council in pursuing affordable housing, we need to address proper tools that are needed, and we need to put them in place. Next slide, please. There's quite a number of tools, and I grouped them. First of all, financial, then you'll see land assets in the next slide. Financial is the ugly part of it. As you talk to a developer and they're putting up a $5 million development, they're going to say, well, we'll give you 10% of the units, but your share is going to have to be 10% of the $5 million. So the developers very quickly get you around to a bottom line. What are you putting in for what are you getting out of this? So all of these particular financial tools you'll see here, these are ones recommended by the County of Simcoe, so they're not just plucked out of the air, and they're also used by many of those individual municipalities I mentioned earlier on in the presentation. First and foremost, reduce DCs, planning fees, and building fees. Right to the bottom line, these come out of developers' pockets. If they're going to consider putting affordable units into a particular housing development and or just build them straight up, they've got to look at what the costs are and try to keep those down. Property tax exemptions for a set period, either if the developer continues to own the property, or these can be passed through to the resident to reduce the resident's costs and thereby make it a much more affordable proposition for the individuals. And a third one that we often hear is reduce to waive parkland dedication. Next slide, please. So in addition to straight up financial tools, there's also land assets. And this comes back to where are we going to site this? Is it in an existing building? Is it on a greenfield development? And who's providing the land for us to do this? Municipalities do have a lot of land assets. It's recognized across Canada. And Midland also has quite a inventory of land assets. We have spent some of our time looking through these things and asking questions that if I have a housing situation where I need to access the downtown services, I need to access shopping, I need to go to my doctor, where would you site this? And some of these particular properties recommend themselves as being ideal locations for that sort of thing, others not so much. Also, you've got to look at where they are located in terms of residents and neighborhoods. Do they fit in? Is this likely a good addition for that neighborhood? These, I won't go through them in particular, but these are the ones that we have winnowed out of that long list that the town has an interest in or an ownership position in, and ones that we feel would make ideal properties to be designated as affordable housing. And recognize I've used the word designated. This doesn't mean absolutely must be used for, but just has the check mark, if you will, against if we come back and we talk about this property, we know that council's got our back and saying, yeah, we could actually do affordable housing on this particular property. Along with that, and very close by, is the fast tracking of necessary OPM zoning changes. And I'm sure you as councilors, I know my time sitting up there, that so often we'd hear from developers about how long the process takes. And I put this in and it's taking long and I've got to do these studies. We can do certain things to make this as expeditious and as simple as possible. And as any developer will tell you, that goes right to their bottom line in making the project real. And the last one is reduce parking requirements. Again, this goes back to one of these bylaw requirements we have. that if we're going to build something, we've got to put in parking, but we all know that parking also comes with a cost to the developer. Next slide, please. So in addition to this, we've got to do some structure around those tools. Those are the tools in the toolkit. So one I'd like to bring out. And the first thing that we know that we have to do is we have to deliver these into this discussion through what I call flexible CIP. Now by that, I mean that as we talk to any developer who's going to build up affordable housing, they'll have different interests, they'll have different capabilities, and we similarly will have a whole range of tools. So as opposed to saying, well, that's the deal, that's, you can only have this and nothing else, it's far better to say we've got a range of tools in our toolkit. We'd like to make some available to you, and others we're certainly not going to put on the table because we feel we've made enough of a contribution. Recognize all this is done on the back of our own mind, that if we're going to build units, our probably bottom line is going to be we want to put no more than $100,000 into a unit, or whatever the metric may be. So with that, we can put in different tools to achieve our objectives and also satisfy the particular interests of that developer. The second bullet refers to the fact that nothing in this life of ours doesn't have a cost associated with it. Similarly, building affordable housing. So at some point, we've got to be honest with ourselves. Where's the money coming from? If you give away property, there's a cost to it. If you're reducing DCs, there's a cost to it. So we'd like to recommend these two particular mechanisms to offset those costs. One could be a 0.75% levy on the property tax that would fund this operation. It would fund things like consultants, that could fund some of the building costs, it could fund particular studies being done. The other one is a 50% interest from the legacy fund. You well know that Midland has got roughly $10–11 million in a legacy fund that generates interest on an annual basis, and not to touch the principal, but that interest is available for good projects by the town.
2 minutes, Mr. McKay.
Oh, we're doing famously here. We'd like to present that to you through the budget process, both the financial and the staff requests. And similarly, we're going to work through staff on a lot of the work here. As I said, dealing with developers, one has got to be cautious. The last thing you want to do is feel like you're bonusing somebody and have other developers put their hand up and say, what does Midland Council thinks it's doing? So with that, we're going to make sure we follow the mechanisms of the community, especially the CIP, in making this work. Next slide, please. So what does that all add up to? Next 6 months, we've got to go back to the public, and we have got to essentially get their input, further input on housing, and explain what we're up to and get input on that as well. People have to be positively engaged because these houses will exist in our community. They will be your neighbors. This will take place through engaging Midland, virtual town halls. Even the CIP process, you should know, has got quite a public consultation part to it. We're also going to have to engage our stakeholders. The County of Simcoe clearly comes to mind in this. They are the designating housing authority for the town of Midland and will be either very closely monitoring us or fully engaged in the work that we're doing. We have to develop that CIP, as I mentioned, so the work will start on that, and that'll come back to council in 2022. And we'll have to establish a process for land assets. Which land assets are going to go into the pot? Which ones can we move forward to affordable housing? Which ones don't want to consider? But we have to be able to do this other than an ad hoc basis. So that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we're proposing to you. Next slide, please. But this comes right back to one of the problems I think that has been a challenge for this community for years. One that we all know that is incredibly serious to our citizens, to our economic future, and to the well-being of our community. And we feel with the tools that we presented and the approach that we presented, we can really do significant work in improving the lifestyle for people throughout Midland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. McKay, and thank you to all the committee members that are in attendance this evening. Thank you for coming. Any questions or comments with regards to this presentation from committee? Councillor Gordon?
Thanks a lot for the presentation. I keep wanting to call you Mayor McKay.
Right.
Yeah, it's hard. Anyway, I guess like I've been very supportive of, I mean, who wouldn't be, of this initiative. I mean, it's the one thing we all heard banging on doors 3 years ago, the lack of affordable, and now we call them attainable housing. And, you know, we have homeless camps in the woods, and there's just so much need. But one of the frustrating parts that I've learned through this whole process, and I'm sure is you know, no shock to you, is how much impact can we as a lower tier municipality actually have on these housing issues when it's really not within our jurisdiction, and we really get zero funding from the province for it because it goes to the county because it's their wheelhouse. If all this effort is funded to the county, and you know, we can identify lands and say, hey, here's some green field that's serviced and checks all the boxes, and the county still doesn't choose our land in the lottery, it feels like, what real tangible impact could we promise the residents by adding that 0.75% on their tax bill or drawing down some interest from the MPUC reserve to really affect tangible change? How can we promise them we can do this when it's really not our responsibility? And I won't say duplicating what the county's doing, because I guess they're not, because that's why we're doing it. So that's my first question, and that's born of a broader one, okay? The second one is a little more on point, and that's, have we considered that one tool that it seems nobody wants to talk about, the elephant in the room, inclusionary zoning? And I know that Midland alone, you know, we'd be shooting ourselves in the face if we tried to implement that by ourselves without Penetang, Tiny and Tay also. But have we or you talk to our neighbors to try and come together and think about inclusionary zoning? And maybe, you know, the smarter people in the room could explain to make sure I'm actually using the right term and what that is, and whether or not it'd be worthwhile. So there's my two little bundled questions. Both of them probably have long answers. Thank you.
Mr. McKay.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gordon. Two excellent questions, and I'll do my level best to give you some response on it. To the first one, what can we expect with this particular initiative? And frankly, shouldn't somebody else be doing it? That is, we're going to put these tools in place at the municipal level, and we are a two-tier municipality. We're at the wrong end of the stick to do these sorts of things. That's the argument that's generally been out there. I've lived with county, and first of all, I don't want to say bad things about county. Understand that they do a lot of good work in housing, but their focus has been traditionally social housing. They have got provincial money to provide certain programs, and they do that to their best of their ability and do it quite well. So they are focused on particular programs for particular groups that the province has designated, and they'll do their level best to equitably distribute these funds. I know in my time on council, we were involved in a couple of these, and it's fair to call them competitions, that the county will put out its criteria. You'll write up a response to that criteria. They've got far more requests for that funding than they have ability to pay. So with that, they'll choose the top three, and the rest of you guys, that's all you're going to get. So in a broader sense, public spirited sense, the people in these towns live on our streets. They are our neighbors. And so we can point out, well, the county didn't give me any money, so you're out of luck. And is that the end of it? And the answer that we've decided, we've seen across Canada, and I'll give you communities like Barrie and Aurelia, is no. That if you're organized, if you have the attitude you want to do something, if you put some of the tools in place, you can incent, you can leverage, you can jawbone, choose your favorite term, to get a lot more done than you would just by saying, well, we'll wait for the county to put up another contest and see if we get lucky this time. So I can give you examples all across Canada where this has been done. It's not in the short term. If you're expecting this to be done in the next year, that's not realistic. We can't put a shovel in the ground in the next 4 years, as you know, even with all the money in the world. This is a long-term proposition. And that's why even the funding that we're asking for, this is, it's small dollars. And we're talking maybe $100,000, $150,000 in very round numbers, which are those two options that we put on there. So with that, you're not going to buy an awful lot of housing. Your typical unit cost, you could refer this to the counties, in the $300,000 to $400,000 a unit. That's an economy efficiency type of unit. So these are not big dollars. But with that, if you can bring forward land that a developer finds useful, if you can put a few dollars in the pot, and if you get rid of some of the administrative overhead, you can, even with county dollars, and sometimes the dollars are available, make a much more convincing approach to someone who can build housing than just by, say, going back and using the county programs. So I don't overpromise this. I don't want to say that, yeah, this is magic, we'll get it all done in the next 2 or 3 years. This is, I hate to say, it's a lifestyle change for the town. This is something, once we start this path, we've got to be serious about continuing it. There's no point in trying to build houses over 2 years and saying we're out of the business. We have lacked affordable housing for decades, and we're not going to resolve this problem in a couple of years. But this is the first step. It gives us the tools, it gives us the attitude, it gives us the leadership to actually make a substantive change about housing. Now, before I get into, I almost forgot what your second question is. Mr. Lebrecht, do you want to comment on this? Mr. Lebrecht has got a wealth of experience on how this is run at different communities across Ontario in particular. Dan?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mackay, Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to council. Appreciate the opportunity speaking. I think Mr. Mackay has basically kind of given you the broad context, but to the bigger question, what can we do? You can do a lot. The number one complaint of developers across the province, if not the country, is it takes too long to get through a planning process. So if you want to make affordable housing an option, and you say you get, front of the line, like American Express, you get to we're going to run you through, you'll have people willing to work with you, because time is money. It's probably worth more getting a process that works with the community quickly than any of the grants and incentives that you can do. So there's a lot you can do to make yourself affordable housing friendly, just from looking at your zoning, your bylaws, and your processes. And the rest, as Mr. Mackay says, it's about money. But if you have a friendly planning process, that makes a big difference of getting people to come to you. And to your earlier point, in regards to working with your neighbors in Penetang, Tay, and Tiny, obviously that's a great idea, because there's power in working together, and the more of you working together, it's in effect, the residents are all your residents, because you can push them to the end of the street, and then they're Penetang's problem, but they're all your residents one way or another, and you don't want to lose people, you want to gain people. So that's basically all I have right now. Take it from there. Back to you, Mr. Mackay.
So I'll finish up the second question. The question is also about inclusionary zoning. And again, I'll be very brutal about this. If you look at it from the developer's point of view, inclusionary zoning says you have to put in a certain number of affordable units. Affordable units typically are a cost to the developer. They'll be quite upfront. We're not making money off of this. So what are you going to do to incent us? So if you use that, especially in an area, and again, being brutally honest about Midland, we're not a fast growth area. Now, things have changed recently with things in the marketplace, but developers will tell you, you don't come to Midland to build out a neighborhood. It takes time. So the market pressure to make inclusionary zoning that effective are just not here. So put that together with the fact that the county hasn't even included on their list of things you'd like to do to move forward. It wasn't one that rose to the top of our list. Would that cause us to throw it out entirely? The answer is no, but it's certainly not one that I'm prepared to come to you and say we've got to do inclusionary zoning. So I hope that's an answer.
As a quick follow-up, if I could.
Yes, please. Councilor Gordon, follow up.
Fast track. When I hear fast track in relation to planning and development, I start to think of a 3-letter acronym that seems to be quite hated now that you read in the news a lot, and that's the letters M, Z, and O.
Yep.
Is fast track equal municipal zoning orders and bypassing the environmental concerns and stuff to appease development? Is that something we're prepared to discuss or entertain for affordable housing?
Well, luckily, you won't have to make a decision on that tonight, but you're absolutely right. More and more communities are just simply going to the minister and said, we want this done here. We don't want to go through the normal planning process and all the reviews. Just write us a letter and it's done. And I'm not going to say yes or no. It is just a fact of life. We can do things without the MZO. We can change some of our procedures, some of our certainty. Certainty is also part of the risk. If I put it into the hopper and it may be 6 months or maybe 2 years, I've got an awful good reason not to go through that process. But if I can go to a developer and said, once the paperwork's filed, it's clear in 6 months and everything should be checked, that reduces an awful lot of the risk, i.e. cost for that developer. So I don't want to say it's all about MZO. MZO, as I said, is a fact of life. If it seems appropriate in some communities, ones very close to us have used it, maybe we should too.
Thanks for your great information, and you made me smarter tonight. Thank you.
So next up, I have Councillor Main, then I have Councillor McGinn, then Mayor Strathern and Councillor Prost. Councillor Main?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Yeah, this has been the last 6 months. I feel like I've been in a housing crash course. It's great. There's lots and lots of content to read on this matter. So I just want to say, like, we obviously know how what dire situation is. The housing survey results they were getting were absolutely flabbergasting. They were just so heart-wrenching. It was crazy. And so we're kind of looking at kind of the middle of the housing spectrum. Affordable rentals is something that is kind of the highest end of the social housing, and affordable attaining housing, which is the lowest end of the home ownership spectrum. And so to Councillor Gordon's point, there's no way that we can go it alone. And all of our efforts are definitely going to be under the partnership model. So the County of Simcoe is obviously a great partner with us for housing, social housing, or even affordable rentals. There's also different non-government players like Habitat for Humanity, which we've partnered with in the past. And there's also, we're looking at different new emergent tools, community land trusts. That's very popular in British Columbia. There's about 10 or 12 in Ontario. It's kind of the umbrella organization, which then entrusts the buildings that are built under that, usually operated as cooperatives. The town of Midland has 2 cooperatives, which is great for affordable rentals. But that's kind of on the affordable rental side of things. And so we're going to continue to look at how we achieve the attainable and affordable housing, home ownership. And those are the 2 issues that we're really facing, is affordable rentals and affordable home buyer opportunities. And I just wanted to quickly comment, because we have been talking a lot about the potentially upcoming, well, we have to do it as part of our official plan, the zoning bylaw review. And that is going to be another subsequent project where we can really unlock potential in our community, various upzoning or densification, increasing permissibility for secondary suites. All that can be contained within the zoning bylaw review for the entire town. But also, as it was mentioned by Mr. Lebrecq, was that we can pre-zone some of our properties. If we've highlighted a property that we say this is for sure going to be housing, we can already start the zoning and move it along, so that when the partners come along or we get to the certain point, that it's developed ready, or it can be partnered with somebody for development. So I just want to make those comments, and thank you again for your efforts, Mr. McKay and Mr. Lebrecq.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Next up, I have Councillor McGinn. Councillor McGinn, had a question or comment?
I feel like I'm going to be shorter than I was anticipating, because I'm following Councillor Main. And you brought up some fantastic points. Thank you first for what you've presented, and I appreciate the work that you're doing. And I agree with what Councillor Main was saying and what was presented about fixing our process and having it be streamlined. As Councillor Main said, have it ready. Have the properties ready. I think that's a fantastic way to move forward, because if we were to do that now, then when we get to the next step, we've already completed a step. So there is things that we can take action on as we speak. One thing that I thought was really interesting was when you're talking about land trusts and co-ops, was there's also an opportunity perhaps for rent to own scenarios, or where there's in co-ops or in rentals, where a percentage of the rent that is collected is then returned. So then what the person essentially is doing is they're not actually owning that property, but it's a stepping stone. It's a very interesting way to move forward. And it also means that that property itself has assets, it has liquid assets, and it has to be managed very well, but it's possible to do it. So then when a tenant is ready to move into home ownership, then they have saved a little bit. And, God forbid, they find themselves, in a crunch, or, there's a crisis. one of the things that can be done, and this is in a co-op in Oakville, is they can then go and they can speak to the landlord and say, you know what, this is what is going on this month, or this is, you know, this is the issue I'm facing. And instead of that money going towards buying their house, they have a conversation with, you know, support teams. And it does come out of them purchasing a home moving forward, but they're learning how to save. It's a beautiful model. So yes, I thank you very much. That was just one of the things I wanted to bring up, is that, you know, is this something that has been considered? Is this something that has been looked into? Is a way to help people once they're in an affordable rental? How do you make it a stepping stone for them? What else can we do? Yes, obviously the first thing is get a roof over your head. Once you have a roof over your head, you can receive mail. It's easier to get a job. You feel better. But it's a second step that also can help fuel other homes. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because there's liquid, and I'm not sure if has it been considered, and do I need to clarify further?
Councilor McGinn, no, you
Sure.
want to clarify further that you're quite right. There's a number of municipalities that have pursued this, where they're actually put incentives for, let's call it, proper stewardship of the rental property, either paying a rent on time, maintaining civil order, if you will, contributing to the life of the community. And you're quite right. These things actually have a very beneficial effect, and essentially teach you how to be a good homeowner. The challenge we all get with these things, and as you said, it's something you should look into, is that we also have to take baby steps first. We also have to just learn our way through. And some of these things you can well appreciate if you're starting to look after the fiduciary responsibility of properties and looking after essentially notional bank accounts associated with benefits against future real estate. You better make sure you do it right, not only for the benefit of the tenant, but for protection of the town. The last thing you want to do is get into a dispute that somebody thought they were owed something and you said they don't. So absolutely, these are the kinds of interesting programs that can be rolled out, but I'd only caution that by saying in the fullness of time. Initially, we've got to get our foot in the door and say, can we get affordable housing built in our community? Here's how we do it. And then with that, let's start talking about the tenancies and seeing if we wish to go that path as well. That'll be another presentation for council.
Thank you very much. Your worship?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Main and all the speakers. Basically, the old Boy Scout model, be prepared for all eventualities. We've had an election, federal election. Right out of the gate, all parties were talking about how they're going to deal with housing. I think as that debate unfolds in the House and it goes to committee, you're going to see a number of options presented. They're going to come down fairly quickly, not unlike the Rapid Housing Initiative, where that's a small houses being built, but also motels being re-outfitted. And if you were agile enough then and had the right package, then you were approved in the first round. There's a second round now, and Midland has a proposal, and so we'll see how that fares. We hear it's got a good chance. We also have another supportive housing project going on currently, and but most importantly, I think if we're not ready, if we don't have the tools, and so one of the partners, for example, identified as CMHC. CMHC is not going to spend a lot of time with you if they don't think you're serious. So you need to show that you have a plan, you have the tools in place. The Section 107 of the Municipal Act speaks against what's called bonusing. And one of the ways to deal with that is we're asking, which is a community improvement plan for the entire town, dealing with housing and maybe some other aspects. To Councillor Main's point, there are ways to deal with it through zoning. People are not going to like me saying this, but MZOs are not the bugaboo that everybody says they are. They're a useful tool. They've been around for a long time. Misused, they're not good. But if you look at how they were used in the county of Simcoe most recently, They were almost all exclusively for affordable housing, and they were not used to circumvent the rest of the planning processes. Should we use them? I don't know that we need to if we plan appropriately, but it's the big thing here is to be prepared. In the last tranche that came down from county in the affordable side, Collingwood, Say Beach, Bradford, West Gwillimbury, Penetanguishene, Aurelia, all were selected for anywhere from, and Victoria Harbor were selected for affordable housing projects from anywhere from 40 units up to about 140 units, as well as support facilities as well. They were prepared, we weren't. Not because we just didn't expect it. And so, and we had to put the pieces in place. This is an exercise in getting us there to be prepared. And I think I'd just suggest that you can, this is the CIP, and considering some of the budgetary considerations to build a reserve and provide a resource to be prepared is what this presentation is from, I believe. So I think that everybody's spot on about this business about aligning yourself to be ready when these programs come down, particularly from the federal government, and they will. Thank you.
Councillor Prost?
Thank you. I like what I'm hearing. I think we're on the right track. But affordable housing is very different for different people, for everybody. And I'm just wondering, and I know co-ops work fantastic, and I think they do very well. And I think that's probably, in my opinion, I think that's the best way to go, is the stepping stone. And there's just so many ways that way. But my question is, are we even considering any social housing?
Mr. McKay?
Yes, thank you very much for that question, Ms. Prost. At this point, no, the social housing portfolio is clearly with the county, and they have programs covering what they feel are all the appropriate avenues of social housing. I don't want to describe all of them. I'm sure you're probably well aware of them. So in order to put in social housing, we would have to either fully cooperate with the county, that is essentially blend with their program, or conflict with the county. So in resolving the issues that confront the town of Midland, we have done fairly well from the county in terms of social housing. And I realize there's some people that may differ with that view, but the county has recognized that Midland has got an awful lot of their social housing portfolio, and they're very competent in terms of delivering that. So we have chosen very specifically to move, if I can say, up the spectrum a little bit to that attainable housing that Councillor Gordon mentioned, which is all of the folks who may not qualify for social housing, but nonetheless need some assistance with housing to live in this community.
Okay, thank you. Just a follow-up of that. I do just worry, just a comment, that we're going to do all this work and hopefully make a lot of people happy, and a lot of more people will have homes. But I still think we're going to be facing a big problem in this area. Just my comment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I think we all appreciate the social housing issues are not going away, but the county is the agent designated by all to do it, and we will certainly be supportive of them and what we can do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments this evening? I see none. I want to thank our deputant. Councillor Gordon, last word.
All right, just a quick one. I mean, I know this is a tough corner to paint you into, but if you had to pick, if everything lines up, how soon until we had 50 more units in Midland? Are we talking like next term?
Councillor Gordon.
Clearly we're talking next term because that's next year. Sorry, are we talking like 5 years from now, or?
Yeah. Well, having had some experience here, as soon as you put a number on the table, that's the headline, and everybody remembers that till the day you die. So I'll say officially, I don't know, to be quite honest with you. I wish I had a good solid number that will have this
This is
at
years
that
away.
time, but there's just so many moving parts to this. The mayor has mentioned some of them with provincial programs. We have no idea how the county is going to respond and what resources they could put. So no, I don't want to be elusive on this, but I must be.
If I may have a specific example, out of Kingston, they received $7.5 million from the federal government for housing, and that got them 28 units. So.
Thank you, Councilor Main. Yeah, I think it's important that we're prepared moving forward, and this is the first step in moving that preparation. And Mr. McKay, if you want to hold on, we do have a motion coming out of your deputation, so I'll go ahead and read it, and you can wait for the vote. So that it's that council consider directing staff to develop a CIP for the provision of affordable, attainable housing throughout the entire community that will study at a minimum the tools as outlined in Schedule 1 with an update to this council by the end of the second quarter of 2022. And when the final report may be ready for the new council to consider. And 2, that an addition of 0.75% of the levy and or an allocation of 50% of the earned income from the PUC legacy fund minus inflation be considered in the 2022 budget process as continued annual contribution to a housing review. I need a mover and a seconder to get this on the floor. Moved by Mayor Strathern, second by Councillor McGinn. And any questions or comments with regards to this item? I see none. All those in favor? Looks like we carried. Thank you very much, Councillor. Mayor. I almost said Mayor McKay. Mr. McKay, for coming this evening. Always a pleasure to have a former councillor in our presence, and we greatly appreciate all your hard work to yourself and the committee. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and my thanks to Midland Council. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. All right, next up on the agenda is a public hearing. 1 second, please. To fill out my paperwork also. So next up, we have a public meeting for 16845 Highway 12. I'd like to call this public meeting to order. This public meeting is being held under Municipal Act to consider an application for proposed amendment to the Town Sign Bylaw 2011-79, representing 16845 Highway 12. The purpose of this public meeting is to hear from residents and to seek clarity on the application. Council is not making the decision on the application or taking a position. Staff will report back in the future with a recommendation report. This is your opportunity to speak, and the council encourages you to do so. I will ask that the town's planning student, Ms. Anderson, to introduce the application, confirm notification, and any correspondence received. Ms. Anderson, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Strathern, Deputy Mayor Ross, and members of council. Tonight, I will be providing a presentation for an application for a sign bylaw amendment. Next slide, please. This application for an amendment to the sign bylaw is respecting the property 16845 Highway 12, known as Walmart. The application was submitted by MHBC on behalf of Walmart Canada. The property is zoned highway commercial. Notice for this meeting was provided in accordance with applicable bylaws and affords the public an opportunity to provide comments or concerns to be taken into consideration by council and staff. No correspondence has been received prior to the meeting. Next slide, please. The application for a sign bylaw amendment requests permission to install 12 ground signs on the south side of the existing Walmart building. The town sign bylaw restricts the number of ground signs per property and the distance between each sign in the highway commercial zone. Within the highway commercial zone, 1 ground sign is permitted per street frontage, and an additional sign may be permitted on a lot with a frontage of 100 meters or greater. Ground signs must also be 45 minutes apart from another. Due to the large number requested and the spacing between the proposed signs, this proposal is being treated as an amendment rather than as a variance, which would have been handled by the sign variance committee. As this proposal is being treated as an amendment, the sign bylaw states that any amendment to the sign bylaw shall be referred to council for approval. The proposed signage design and location on the property can be seen on screen. The 12 signs will be used in one specific location on the property to designate parking spaces as online order pickup spaces. Each sign is proposed to be 9 feet in height and contain a 2-foot by 4-foot panel, as well as a second 1-foot by 1.5-foot panel. The larger signage panels will have pickup written on them, and the smaller panels will provide instructions on how to check in and inform the store that you've arrived and are waiting for your purchase to be delivered to your vehicle. Next slide, please. Staff will receive public comments from this meeting and include them in a review of the proposal. Originally, staff had recommended that this matter be considered by council this evening. On further review of the matter, staff noted some questions surrounding the number and size of the signs at the proposed location. However, it is our intent to hold further discussions with the applicant on the proposal and return it with a recommendation at a later date. This concludes my presentation, and myself or Director Farr would be more than happy to answer any questions that council may have.
Thank you very much, Ms. Anderson. Great job. I will ask if extend an invitation to the applicant or their agent to make a president provide additional information. I understand the applicant is Mr. Oz Kamel of MHBC. Do you have any questions or comments to share with us before we move forward to the public input?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to Council. Thank you for that presentation. Just a little bit of additional information. So what we're proposing to do here is something that we're proposing to do nationally, and we've been doing this across Canada from coast to coast. Given COVID and the ongoing restrictions, no restrictions, there's been an increased demand for alternate ways for customers to get their groceries, to get their goods out of the store. What this is signage in the parking lot that would allow people to park in the parking lot. If anyone's ever used the service now, there's an app. It's actually, it geolocates you as you're approaching the store, so people get the order ready as you're approaching the store. I've used the service several times. It used to take about an hour and a half to get my groceries, and now it takes about 10 minutes. So it's actually really well done. So what happens is it's just another means for people who aren't comfortable yet going into stores and just providing that second level of safety for people who would rather have whether the goods are delivered to your door, just like an Amazon or something like that. If you want to go to the store and pick it up, this is what that service is. The town's sign bylaw doesn't distinguish these types of signs because it is a rather newer service. So unfortunately, it gets grouped into the ground signs, and the ground signs are those same signs that you see with the big signs that you see, on a shopping center, multiple signs, and you'll see Walmart and all the other center stores that are at that center. That's why we in discussions with staff, we had taken the approach that a sign bylaw amendment here would be preferred. And the reason, I know staff had flagged a couple of concerns just recently. And one of the things that I did want to just touch upon, one of the reasons that the size of the sign is the size it is and that there's double panels is that's a very big parking lot. And one of the things is the orange tells you where to go. And the intent is that the sign will be internally facing. It's not double-sided, it's internally facing. So there's not going to be that impact from the highway or anything like that. I just wanted to put that out there for council in case there are questions. I'm also aware of, I'm preempting any questions. I am also aware of the condition of the parking lot. That was brought up about a week ago. And I immediately actioned that because I wasn't aware of that. But then I found out that they had already actioned it. And I even got pictures today. They've temporarily filled potholes with gravel. They even sent me pictures to prove it because I didn't believe them. But they sent me pictures to prove it to me because I said, I'm not going to council without any evidence. So they sent me pictures proving that it's been filled with gravel, and they're working right now to just get the concrete out there to fill them permanently. So I in case that was preempting anyone's question.
That's wonderful news. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Now I'll remind the public, if I could, that if you are wishing to make comment, the number to call is 705-526-4275, extension 2217. Sorry, extension 2212. I apologize. Once again, it's 705-526-4275, extension 2212. I will now ask for any questions on clarity from council. Any questions with regards to this item? Councillor Gordon? And then I have Councillor Main.
Thanks. I just wanted to appreciate you being preemptive about the parking lot thing. We take a beating online about that. People think that's the town of Midland that just lets the parking lot get filled with those craters. So I'm glad you spoke to it, and I'm glad that they're taking some action to fix it.
Councillor Main?
Just a quick question. The sign is inward facing. Is there any thoughts of putting something nice on the outer side, the outside Highway 12 facing? I don't know, public art or something like that on the back side of the sign?
Sir?
Some of the signs do have are double-sided. A little bit of a concern here, just the highway and the orange and just distracting drivers. So I don't know, we were thinking that just keep it inward facing at this location. The location of the signs also is part of the new service. You'll notice that it was the former tire lube center. So that's the intent, is that that's shutting down, and they're going to redeploy that space for this service to deliver goods out of the store to the cars. I do appreciate the comment, though. I think we'll have to have continued discussions with staff on that, if based on what I heard today.
Thank you so much. Councillor McGinn?
I really have to start getting my request to speak up before Councillor Main. Good job, Councillor Main. And thank you very much for being preemptive, because I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Madam Deputy Clerk, do we have any calls at this point with regards to the public meeting?
No, there are no calls.
All right, we'll give it a couple more minutes. If we don't have any, we'll close this meeting. But any other questions or comments from council? I see none. Councillor McGinn?
There was another one. Have you taken into consideration snow load and plowing?
Sir?
Yes, we have. We have thought about snow load and plowing. The intent is that there's two, I call them two different versions of these signs. One of them is on a concrete base that's above the ground with a small, we call it an omega post. One of the things, the concerns with those ones is that they do move around in snow, wind conditions. We're here at this location, we were proposing to go with the permanent sign with the bollard. If you look from a street view perspective on Google, I'm sure you've all been there so many times, but you'll see that there's already some bollards there already because of where the parking spaces are located and that dip in the hill before you get to the highway. So the idea would probably be to either reuse the bollards or upgrade the bollards so that they're structurally sound for both.
Wonderful, thank you. Any, Madam Clerk, any calls this evening?
No calls.
Okay, thank you. No further comments. The deputy, I will call this meeting to an end. I want to thank Ms. Anderson. Wonderful presentation. Great job. We'll give you an A+. We'll make sure we pass that along to your school. And thank you so much. And thank you very much to Mr. Kamel for coming this evening. Much appreciated.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We'll move on to the next item, which is the COVID-19 update from our CEO, Mr. Deneau. Mr. Deneau?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Can you hear me okay? Great, thank you. I'll provide an overview of kind of where the current situation is, and then a few comments on the vaccine proof policy that we had to implement at our rec center, and then I'll talk about the vaccine procedure we're going to be implementing with town staff. And then obviously open for any questions that you might have. So on the epidemiological front, Midland, Penetang, Tay, and Tiny, all four communities through the month of September saw increasing cases. Over the previous months, we saw some peaks in April that started to come down dramatically, and then we certainly saw in the September months, those cases start to increase again. So everyone's obviously watching what's happening in October, and you're seeing lots of regulations and enforcement being put in place, and you can also see some of the consequences in some other provinces. So again, we're living with COVID here. We're trying to adjust as best as we can and try to maintain delivering services. We've never stopped delivering services to our community. I think we found a way to do that, and we found a way to keep our staff safe. So I'm quite grateful for everyone contributing to that. In terms of Simcoe Muskoka, just so you know, the The total number of vaccinated with one dose is 85% of the 12 plus population. And those vaccinated with two doses is now at 80% of the 12 plus population. Okay, so again, those numbers continue to rise and getting to that area. I think the province still wants to get to a 90% marker before they consider any other changes. So, we're on our way, but again, that last mile is always the toughest mile to finish. 6 people are in hospital, 261 deaths, one new death in Simcoe, Muskoka. So again, 133 active cases and 19 were new. So that's the situation in terms of the epidemiological process. On September 22nd, as I think everyone knows, there was a vaccine proof policy that came into effect that affected many businesses. They had to react to that, as well as our rec center. And I did want to just let you know that at the rec center, the experience has certainly been overwhelmingly positive in terms of the compliance. And that's, I would say that's been throughout the pandemic. People who want to use that facility are quite respectful. There were some incidents. There was an incident there on the first day that I was there, and I was able to see that happen, and our staff handled it very professionally. But for the most part, overwhelmingly, people understand why it's required, are complying with it, and we're not seeing very many incidents at all. So I really want to thank our staff for doing that. They had to obviously get the process in place. It's very paper-based, as we know right now. There is some bit of a digital element, but we're really looking forward to the QR code, which will hopefully make this all much more seamless and protect confidentiality of people. So looking forward to that. The other group I want to thank as well, and again, I witnessed this personally, was the organizations who represent those patrons who use the facility. So the hockey organizations, the basketball organizations, the seniors organizations, they've really helped in getting the message out to have those people come prepared, certainly to the rec center, and have helped us work as smoothly as it can. So I really want to extend our appreciation for all their help to make sure this has been working well. So that was this week, and obviously continues as we keep moving through that. The other piece I want to update you on is the vaccine procedure. And I think I've been accused of dragging my feet on this, and I can tell you there are no skid marks on my shoes. So that certainly isn't the case. I think we've been working really, really hard. This is one of those procedures, and I'm not against certainly taking good work done by other municipalities and using them for our benefit. That's an efficient way to do things. This procedure is not one that you do that with. This is talking about the safety of our employees, so we want to be very thoughtful about implementing something like this, and we wanted to make sure we did our due diligence. So we listened to our staff. We polled our staff on many things, and got some good feedback from our staff on that. I worked directly with the chief medical officer, and he was able to provide me with information, from the Ontario Public Health Unit. He also reached into the CDC and gave me information from the CDC to help us understand some of this information. We reviewed, a legal position on this type of procedure. We worked with more municipalities than I can name, certainly in the time allowed here, to understand what they were doing with their vaccination policies, some of the elements they were considering, and why they were considering it. The Human Rights Commission, we also looked to them for some guidance on how they interpreted some of these aspects. So very thoughtful work has gone into that. It's taken, a little bit of time, but it's time that was necessary. So we're in the process of rolling this out. When you have 4 bargaining units, that we have a process. We want to make sure that they're aware of what's going on. So today we shared the information with them. We shared it with our management team. And tomorrow we're going to start to roll it out to our staff, and I'll certainly share a copy of the vaccination policy with council as well. We'll have some sit-down sessions with our staff in the afternoon to make sure they have an opportunity to hear from us on our thinking behind this and how it actually works, and also take their questions. So looking forward to do that. I don't think there's anything. The effective date for this will be November 1st. Okay, so again, we've got a bit of time to get organized in terms of how we will administer this and give our our people some time to get organized in how we do this. But that's fairly consistent with what I'm seeing with some of the other municipalities as well. So with that, I think I'll turn it over to you in case you have any questions.
Any questions or comments with regards to this item? I have Mayor Strathern, and then I'll go to Councillor Gordon. Mayor Strathern.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Through you to Mr. Deneau. We had a very successful, I would say, program in place to provide service and yet ensure the safety of our employees and the ability to continue essential services. Throughout the pandemic, it took a bit of time to massage that. I think it was time well spent. The sense I'm getting from conversations that we've had is that the program that is being rolled out for the corporation today and tomorrow is probably, it certainly would not apply to council, committees and boards as it stands at the moment. They're not within the employee envelope and then with the corporation. Is it possible to bring that forward as a policy for councils, committee and boards on the 20th of this month? Can you, do you care to comment on that?
Mr. Deneau.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to the mayor. Yes, I think we could meet that deadline. It's I think there's some similarities certainly in the procedure that I would have council consider. You know, the feedback we got from our staff, I'm glad you mentioned it. They did indicate when we surveyed them, they felt quite comfortable about the procedures we currently have in place. But they also wanted clarity on the vaccination procedure side. So, you know, this is in a response to their request to have some clarity around that. So we should certainly want to bring that forward. We do respect the confidentiality of the information that they're providing. So that is certainly part of the procedure, you know, that we're implementing. So, you know, we've got the mechanisms in place to do that. But overall, we're quite confident that it will allow us to be certainly safer, but hopefully allow us to retain everyone, because that is a key part of this policy. We're very fragile as a municipality, as I think we all know, and we saw some examples on the planning side where, you know, the loss of one person can really impact your ability to serve the customers, the communities, and the businesses. So we want to keep as many people employed with the town as possible. We have to do it safely, and we think we found that balance with this procedure. So yes, more than happy to have staff bring forward a procedure for your consideration at the next meeting.
Thank you. Follow up, Mayor Strathern? Mayor Strathern, no? Councillor Gordon?
Thanks.
Councillor Gordon?
Thanks, sorry for that. My internet's been a little sketchy here. So that's good, actually, and that probably negates the need for the motion that appears on the agenda later on. I'm glad that we're adopting that. I read that Penetanguishene must have done this in concert with us. They've announced theirs. They've effectively mirrored what it looks like the health unit's recommending in the county. So there's no firings, no terminations. It's education and then rapid testing for folks that either don't want to get a vaccine or can't because they have a medical exemption. So that sounds like it's a nice, balanced, fair approach. That's all I was after. My one other concern, I think the mayor spoke to. If we're going to have this policy impacting our staff, then you know, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. It certainly should apply to council, boards, and committees. So I look forward to that coming at our next meeting, and we can, you know, formalize our unity with our staff and subordinates, and make sure that everybody's on a same playing field and we have the same policy in place for everyone. We're not special and exclusive. So good work. I'm glad you did that. And I don't think we even need to, well, we'll just, whatever happens procedurally to my motion later on tonight, you've curtailed it, and I'm very happy to hear that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gordon. Any other questions or comments for Mr. Deneau? I see none. Thank you very much, Mr. CEO, for the update, and we look forward to that report. Thank you so much. Next on the agenda, we have notice of motion. Does any councillor have a notice of motion to bring forward this evening? Councillor Gordon.
Thank you. This is in relation to the parking. I think it's no shock that this is coming tonight, and I will be asking for us to set aside our procedural policy and deal with it this evening. But that's a separate discussion. So let me read this in first. And it's quite simply that council direct the immediate pause of paid parking to allow for a review of technical issues, user sentiment and adoption, re-implementation options, and timing, as well as budgetary impact. So in a nutshell, it's the request to pause our paid parking right now until.
Thank you very much.
Get it sorted out.
So I've heard that you had a request to suspend the rules of order to address it tonight. We would need a 2/3 vote. We need a motion to get that on the floor. So I need a mover and a seconder to get that on the floor. I see that it's Councillor McGinn and Councillor Prost. We will not be discussing. We will not be discussing the motion itself. We will only be discussing whether we'd like to suspend the rules. If it is voted down, it will not go anywhere. It will be on the agenda for our next meeting, and full discussion will take place if indeed we do not get the 2/3 vote. Any questions and comments with regards to clarity of the 2/3 votes? Councillor Gordon.
Thank you. So without discussing the actual meat and potatoes of this, the reason why I'm asking that we do this, and it's not unusual, we've done this before. I think we did it 2 meetings ago, or for the Councillor Cunningham's motion about enabling free parking for accessible permits in the town. It doesn't have to be something burning to the ground that gets us talking about things and setting aside our procedural policy. The reason why I'm suggesting that we talk about this tonight is that there's no material change that could come from delay. Because the pause allows staff to go away and do what we're going to be asking them to do, and gives us time to try and fix this problem. The pause, if we implement it tonight, simply stops the pain. It puts the fire out. It puts a bandage on the hemorrhage that we have of goodwill and that we in the community right now, and the problems that we're having. And we pause it now. If we don't pass this tonight, or we don't speak to it anyway tonight, whether it passes or fails is irrelevant. Yes.
The motion is on the floor and there is no debating the motion right now at this point.
No,
We have
only
to, council has to vote on, exactly.
Thank you
So
very much,
you
Madam
can't
Clerk.
debate it and we
apologies.
just, that's okay. Thanks.
It's only with regards to whether we're going to suspend the rules of
To allow a discussion, yes.
to allow discussion. So there's no discussion to take place at this point. Sorry, Councillor Gordon.
Thank
Councillor
you.
Main, it's based just
No
on
problem.
procedure.
Sorry.
Yeah, for the procedure, I'm going to support the suspension of the procedure bylaw so that we can discuss it, because essentially notice has been given. Everybody in town knows that we're talking about this, even though it's not on the agenda. So let's talk about it. Thank you.
Madam Clerk.
I was just going to mention that we shouldn't be, you guys shouldn't be debating. You just have to vote on the motion. That's it. And
All
then
right,
once
we're not
it's,
So I will
Yeah.
ask, so I apologize, my mistake. I will ask for council's approval. We needed 6 people. 2/3 vote to suspend the rules of rules of order to address it tonight. If not, it will go on to our next agenda. All those in favor? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have our 6. So we will now turn it over to Councillor Gordon. If you'd like to have the opportunity to discuss your motion or maybe read it again for us, we'll get a mover and a seconder to for your motion, and then we'll discuss it. If you could read your motion again, sir.
Certainly. That council direct the immediate pause of paid parking to allow for a review of technical issues, user sentiment and adoption, re-implementation options, and timing, as well as budgetary impact.
So I presume you're moving it. Who would be your seconder?
I would like to second this, or,
Councillor McGinn would be seconder. Any
sorry,
questions?
Councillor Post, I saw your hand too.
Any questions or comments with regards to this motion? Councillor Main?
Thank you. Yes. As a BIA member, we spent a lot of time discussing this last night, and they were unequivocally supportive of the pause. I, am incredibly hesitant of supporting the motion as written. But I do appreciate the sentiment, and there's some elements of Councilor Gordon's motion that I certainly support. We've heard of too many cooks. This is probably an example of too many buttons on the parking machine. So we know that there's user frustration. We know that people are struggling with the buttons and how to use it, the technology of the system. I still am supportive of paid parking, the paid parking system, but I certainly support the concept of having a customer safety, not customer safety, consumer service blitz. Maybe even look at an amnesty of your first ticket is a warning that has the sheet of how to do the process the pay system, or even there's even been a discussion at town hall about sending out leaflets of a step-by-step, or even the expansion of that step-by-step, so it's really clear, a multiple page document that says how to do the steps. It's only 6 or 7 steps, but just trying to get people familiar with the system. So I'm very supportive of that initiative of trying to help people learn and adopt this, become adapted to this new system. But I'm really hesitant of waiving parking fees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Main. Councilor Cunningham?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an important motion. I think it's important that we are looking at the challenges with parking, and that's why I support us looking at it tonight. What I do want to mention is that we are not sitting in a vacuum. We have 2 staff who are diligently listening, not just 2, but the 2 I sat down with about a month ago with all these concerns that they are completely aware about, Mr. Reicheld and Ms. Grenier, who are tasked with great customer service and parking. And rather than making a decision on this without their input, without their findings, without their recommendations and suggestions, I think we are doing ourselves a disservice. And I would much prefer to hear what they have been doing, what they do propose, and what options we actually would have. Because if we have options they're already working on, it would be good to have that update. And if there are options that are just not on the table, such as saying, let's get rid of these pay parking machines, get a full refund, millions of dollars landing in our laps to replace them and do something new, it's important to know what our real options could be. And I believe Mr. Reicheld and Ms. Grenier are the ideal people to actually speak to that.
Mr. CEO, would you suggest that Mr. Reicheld give us an update? I'm just wondering what staff members should move forward with a few comments.
Yeah, if you don't mind, Deputy Mayor, I'd like to provide an overview, and certainly Jim can jump in at any time if he likes.
Wonderful. If you could, that'd be wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I thank certainly all of council for having the discussion on this. I do appreciate that. I think Councillor Gordon's trying to make me a Facebooker, and I wasn't able to see the update that came across. I don't use that platform other than for checking on health unit data or our own town data. But I do appreciate the opportunity to address some of this. I think it's really important that people understand why this system was put in place. I think Councillor Main spoke a little bit to that. This was a decision that was certainly made before I came here, but this is an implementation that I own with our organization. So this is a really important financial tool that every municipality uses to some degree. And certainly a municipality like ours, it is one of the very few financial tools that we can use to offer some relief to our tax levy. I think, and I hope we all appreciate that. And it is substantial. I've heard some people say, this is really not a significant amount that contributes to the town. It is quite significant, to the extent of almost 3% of the tax levy. So if you pause this for any amount of time, you can forego that amount that's in that budget. And certainly we're not keeping pace with the revenue projections. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is the supply chain with COVID did not keep up. So that was delayed with the implementation. every municipality is seeing that. And also some of the volumes, we're seeing, we're not getting the pace of visitors that we had anticipated. We all thought we would be certainly past COVID. So some of those volumes are not materializing. So we will certainly make the case to the province, like many municipalities are, that because of COVID, the revenues in this area are suffering and we need assistance. That is very important. We're certainly seeing a large number of successful transactions on this system. So there are people completing this successfully, a very large volume, but I am not dismissing that people are struggling with this. I come from a long history of implementing IT solutions, and this is, from my standpoint, going through a classic IT implementation curve. And anytime you implement new technology, and certainly this is new to Midland, just like garbage bins, just like roundabouts, there's a lot of change coming at our residents, and this is one of them. And when you are implementing a change like this, it goes through that adoption curve, and at the end of the curve, the last adopters, the ones who struggle the most, are the skeptical bunch, and it's about 15% of your population. So there's no doubt in my mind, and there should have been no expectation that this would have been met with great fanfare and applause. This is a parking system, right, where we are asking people to pay. But the payment that they provide, and it extends to people outside of Midland, helps to pay for the very downtown core that was revitalized for these businesses. It is helping these businesses. $14 million was invested in that downtown. So please don't suggest we're not supportive of businesses. This council is very supportive of businesses. $14 million, but we need to find a way to pay for it. We need to find a way to pay for playgrounds. We need to find a way to pay for roads. We need to find a way to pay for water and sewers. And you saw through the budget process the status of our reserves. Our reserves will be depleted on its current trajectory. We need these financial tools, and it is not insignificant. That is why this system was chosen, to help alleviate some of that pressure on this town. It is to help. It is not to hurt. It is to help. So every time you make a contribution, and if you can spend 41 seconds to do this transaction like I did today, because you can learn it, I am very confident Midlanders will learn this. They are smart, innovative people. Their businesses show you that, but it does take some time. The system that was chosen, and again, this was done thoughtfully. This system is the market leader. Okay, you've chosen the market leader in this space. This technology is tried and true. This business has been in business for over 30 years. I think they know how to build a system. Are there glitches? Absolutely. The iPhone's the leader in the phone market, but I think all of you have probably had an iPhone glitch, or you've had somebody who struggled to use the iPhone. And that's what we're seeing today in this system as well. But we have to live through that experience. And Councillor, Cunningham indicated, we've got a very good customer support team that is listening to our residents. We've changed the signage. We're experimenting with different fonts. We're talking to other municipalities who have the same system, who tell us, yes, we lived through that. Hang in there. We talked to Stratford today, who was trying to find some kind of visor to cut down on the sun glare that they find on the same machines. But you have to live through it. And they do say that you will live through it, but you have to keep going. Learn from those experiences. It's not enough for people to just say, I'm not coming back downtown. I'm not going to support our businesses. I'm frustrated. Tell us why. Please tell us why. Tell us what you experienced. If there was a particular machine that wasn't available, tell us why. We're doing very light enforcement on this, very light. We want to learn from the experience. And again, this is kind of a classic deployment. I think it would be very, very unfortunate if we pause this. We have to continue to learn from this. This is the discipline of sticking with very hard decisions. We all know that there's going to be pressure on the tax levy. We just saw a deputation that's looking for additional money from the residents for a very important need. We need to implement these kinds of levers that will allow us to, reinforce our aging infrastructure and do all those other things like new playgrounds and reinforce Little Lake Park. But we need those levers. So we will continue to learn from this experience. It's very important that we continue to learn. We've got the channels available to help people. We will do private sessions at town hall like Angela's been doing with her team. People can come there in the privacy, and if they feel embarrassed about that. And I do want to express, even the residents, I'm seeing the residents step up and helping a tremendous amount of people to try and help them understand the system. It is, again, I think it's tried, tested and true. The buttons are no different, in Midland than they are in Stratford and Sudbury and Tobermory. The same system is being used. So I'd certainly, suggest we need to. There's a financial reason. There's an experience reason we need to do this, and there are very good consequences, I think, for businesses to do this and the residents of this town. Pausing this, I think, absolutely does nothing.
Thank you, Mr. CEO.
Yeah.
Next up, I have Councillor McGinn and then Councillor Cunningham. Councillor McGinn?
Yes. Well, I'm a little upset. I'm a little upset because I felt as if we were just, as if the debate included our CAO instead of questions being asked. And that makes me a little uneasy. The thing that also makes me uneasy is saying the 15% of skeptical people. I'm one of those people. Today, I used the machine and I was not skeptical, yet I had difficulties using it. I was not limited in any way, shape, or fashion. It did not work for me. And I have a video of it not working while I am trying to help a woman through it. And I'm not one of those 15% skeptical people who are too fast or just frustrated and looking for it to not work. Nobody said anything about not supporting downtown. None of us here on council have ever said that we do not support downtown, and we do support our residents. We're not, the motion doesn't suggest getting rid of the system. This is in response to complaints that have come in. We had a complaint come in from somebody who visited from Ottawa. It's not only our residents. It's not only our merchants. These complaints are reaching beyond our areas. And if we're going to be somewhere where we are a gateway, where we are drawing other people in, if we want to continue growing Midland, then we need to do things to ensure that people still want to come here. If I was living out in Ottawa and heard about a not very enjoyable experience in a small community somewhere, I would think twice about going there. I would. Ottawa to Midland is quite a distance. And for the BIA to be supportive of a motion of this nature says a lot. They are our downtown, or large portion of our downtown merchants. We're not saying stop. We're not saying get rid of it. What we're saying is can we just pause? We usually have a pause anyway in December. We usually have a time where parking is free in the winter. So why not do it now? While we look to see if the firmware is okay, while we gather the information and say, do we have very specific machines that there are repeat complaints about? Is there a software issue? I'm not a software tech person, so maybe I'm using the wrong language, but this amount of social media buzz, the negative comments, is damaging the reputation of Midland and downtown. That is how, that is where we have right now today, the choice and the power to say, yes, we do support Midland, we do support downtown, because we're hearing the damaging comments. We do not want to damage our reputation, and we ought to listen to the BIA and to people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have Councillor Cunningham, Strathern, and then Gordon.
Thank you. Following up with some of the questions I did have about our existing understanding of the problem and our existing investigation into solutions and how we can possibly either, maybe not either, first of all, is there a way to change the software that's running within the parking meters to simplify the system? Is there a way to accelerate using a better app with it that Mr. Reicheld and I talked about that you had originally suggested maybe not till spring. So that would be an app you could use with your cell phone. Myself, I go onto the internet and I buy my parking before I leave the house because it's just so much easier than touching the pay stations. The third problem I'm having a challenge with is every time you change something, you are going to make it harder if you're not making it a lot better. So if we put a pause and there are some tiny things that we can do to change this that make it negligibly better, we now have people going, do I need to pay? Why did I pay when I didn't need to pay? Then when we bring it back online, they'll be saying, I didn't know I had to pay. Why wasn't there more promotion that it was time to pay again? There's also going to be the confusion of when we take the free hour off because we don't want people going downtown for Christmas shopping or whatever. I mean, we want to make sure that break for Christmas shopping is there because I hear people saying, oh, I've only got 15 minutes. How fast can I do what I need to do? I've only got an hour. Maybe I'll just go here because they're doing the free parking because they figured that one out. Every time you change something, you confuse people, no matter how brilliant they are. We had a Toastmasters club that we were trying to start up. And over the course of 3 months, they moved the location 3 times. It killed the club instantly. Brilliant club, free service, amazing people, and snacks. But they moved it 3 times. The more we can do to make this simpler, easier, I fully support. If tonight we hear, and perhaps Mr. Reicheld could pipe up on some of the ways that the existing system that we already have installed, that I'm guessing we cannot change and replace. I mean, if I had a magic wand, what can we do within that system to make it easier? Because I really hesitate to pull things off and put them back and pull them on and put them back because we've already set that up as what we're doing to people by taking away the temporary free. Remember, this was a temporary measure to say, as you roll in, let's do a temporary 1 hour free and a 15-minute free. So if we are indeed taking that away so that people feel more comfortable to shop longer downtown eventually, we've got a lot of confusion existing. So if putting a hold on is not going to make it actually better, I worry that we are just adding more confusion to a difficult situation. And I too, absolutely have had challenges with the parking system. I'm not a big fan. That doesn't mean that there are excellent solutions that are not perfect. I know there are not perfect solutions. So if there could be some feedback on the specifics of what can be done with this system to make the user interface and user experience better, I would really like to know it there.
Mr. CEO, care to comment?
Thank you. I'll allow to Jim to make a comment. The only thing I'll address certainly is again to Councilor McGinn. I'm not sure if she took exception to me participating in the debate, but it's my responsibility, to certainly implement the project along with the administration. So I certainly feel I'm encumbered to make a comment on this. I do accept that there is negative feedback. There's also 38,000 transactions that have gone through. And I can give you an example of a person today who I witnessed who had never used the system before complete the transaction in 41 seconds. So, you can listen to social media and perhaps think this is an overwhelmingly negative experience. And the 15% I refer to is kind of a classic IT implementation. 15% of those people are going to struggle with an implementation. If you take 15% of our population, that's almost 2,000 people that we should expect are going to have difficulty with this, and we should. So we should expect to hear some negative discourse, but that is what you see when you implement something like this. Are you ever going to stop that? Not with something that is this different for people to try and assimilate. The only thing, we keep talking about the firmware updates and the software updates, it's the same system. It's the same system that's being used everywhere. The only difference with our system, the one unique aspect of our system, is the change that this, council suggested we make was to offer the 1 hour free, right? To offer that 1 hour free. And I think that is certainly contributing to some of the confusion on the button. So that's what we're trying to work through and understand how we could present, instructions better. If you follow the instructions that have been taped to the side of the unit, you will have a successful transaction. If one of the units doesn't connect for some reason, there will be, there could be some reason for that. I know you're shaking your head, Councilor McGinn, but I'm telling you, I've done it every day. I did it 3 times today. So it does happen. There is positive indication as well. Not every experience is negative. You have to certainly admit that when you have 38,000. So that's certainly the experience. I can, as Jim has been doing a lot of jurisdiction reach out on this with other cities that have the same type of system. He can offer certainly their perspective that they've shared with him, and he can offer his, his opinion on what the next course should be.
Mr. Reichel, you care to share a bit of information, please, sir?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor, through you to Councillor Cunningham and others as well. Yes, we are exploring another app. I'm looking at what's called Hotspot. City of Stratford is using it as an added bonus to their parking system. City of Barrie uses it for their permit system. I've only heard good things. So that is something I'm looking at. And it can be implemented very quickly at a zero cost to the town. There is a convenience fee, as there is with our app, but it can be maxed out at $2 per month, or you can buy a $20 subscription for the year for that app. As far as our interface and software, as Mr. CAO said, it is the same across the board, across the country. The only difference is we've implemented this free time, and it is a bit of a struggle. I'm not saying it's our only issue. It is a bit of a struggle because we're telling a machine designed to take payment to not take a payment. A possibly better way to do that would be add this free time onto a purchase. That way the flow of their software, the flow of their firmware and software is going as designed. Councillor McGinn, I did see your video. Correct, it didn't work. I don't know why I have a ticket in with them. It looks like there was an update on that machine that put that screen up. It was the first time I saw it. I already have a ticket in. Unfortunately, it didn't come across my desk. Luckily, someone showed me your video, and that's how we got that going. So if you do see it in the future, anyone, please send me an email or give me a phone call, and we'll address that right away. And again, we don't want to keep changing up the way the system works because we are confusing people. We have to redo our signs, redo our instructions. So we're going to try to keep that flow of the screens the same. And we're moving towards it to try to make it easier to make the fonts bigger, the contrast better. You'll notice some machines have a black on white contrast, a dark mode. And we're testing that out at the Harbor, Lot 6, and a couple on Midland Avenue in our problem areas to see if it's better in the sunlight. City of Stratford is looking at screens to go over to, and we're working on that together. The difference between us and them is they don't take debit. They don't take Apple Pay. They don't take Google Pay. We can eliminate that to make it easier. We can take away those pay options, but we offer all those for the convenience of the user.
Thank you, Mr. Reichel. Next up, I have Strathern, Gordon, Ocheski. I'll go to Maine and then McGinn. Mayor Strathern.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. I'm very much in agreement with Councillor Cunningham and the statements made by Mr. Reichel about continually adding change. Unlike I think it was Councillor McGinn, I do come from a software engineering development company. That company became preeminent in its niche globally. And one of the things we learned very quickly was that you test things like crazy. When you introduce a change, and we did introduce the change, there's very much the possibility that it's going to create an issue. I'm not saying that's the only one. I too, just today, going down to the Rainbow Crosswalk celebration, tried to enter into a machine at where the farmer's market is. And I pushed the pay by cash option, and it took me straight to how much cash do you want to put in? Nothing about an hour for free or any of that. So and prior to that, I really didn't have any issue other than visibility issues. We received correspondence from, and just as far as Mr. Deneau is concerned, he is, I believe, the buck stops with him, and I appreciate staff comments for willing to listen to Mr. Reicheld. I'm quite willing to listen to Mr. Deneau at the same time. For any other staff who has legitimate inputs into the conversation. Now, inputs to the conversation, I'm getting more and more emails as time goes by. They come in two forms. One is somebody's mad, and they sit there and they want to vent their spleen. Get it? You know, if you're frustrated, then you should do that. But it doesn't tell me anything. It just tells me you're mad. When we dealt with issues, and there were always issues with introducing new products, there were people, you know, they're at the edge of the Arctic, they're doing a piece of work, their machine goes down, they're not happy. There's a helicopter sitting there, or two of them, $1,800 an hour, personnel, fuel caches, $1 million just to stage. They want action, and you know, so you sit down and you work through the problem with them, and you get information from them. Because if they're mad, let them get their mad out, then you get the information. And that's the second form of communication that I get daily, is people who are offering up suggestions. I've experienced this problem. I'm frustrated with it. And I would like to know what you're going to do about it, but they're specific about the problems. Problems have been categorized, cataloged, and Mr. Reicheld and other people that can go to either flag the machine because it's showing up all the time, or work with the company as Mr. Deneau's been doing, and Mr. Reicheld, and I think Ms. Grenier, to come to a solution. The notion that you just sort of put a garbage bag over these things and stop doing it is not going to get you that information. So you're going to be a long time trying to figure out what's going on. So I agree with Councillor Cunningham that reduce the number of changes to as few as possible, whether that's, you know, stop, start. We saw what happened with that when we went through shutdowns and reopenings, shutdowns. It confused everybody all to pieces. What am I supposed to do now? The other aspect of this is so getting information in that allows us to work with the system and make changes. Second aspect of this is that people feel frustrated, not because they have to pay $1 an hour, and not because they're not being listened to. I don't think there's a bit of that. But what they're really frustrated with is that they try to get the machine going, can't. They've got an appointment, they dash over and make that appointment, gamble. They get a ticket, $25. To me, I think if I was in that person's shoes, I'd be pretty annoyed too. Particularly since for 50 years, I haven't had to pay for that lot for 3 hours, and now I do. And there's no notice that tells me that I have to pay for that lot. Secondly, the machines in the lot, it's like, where's Waldo? The little kids game where you try to find this character in a sea of characters, because there's a bunch of cars in there that are hiding the machines. Pretty basic, but you know, when you're focused on trying to roll out 150 or 160 machines and make sure that you've got all the right attributes, they get overlooked. We recognize that, and staff are working to correct that. And the third thing I'd like to point out here is that there is a financial consideration. It's a serious one, and people were kind of mad at me because Rob Cooper from CTV edited out the preamble and the postamble to my statement about adding 3% to the levy. It's real. You might be mad about it. I certainly don't like it, but it's real. It's not because of mismanagement. It's because our costs keep going up and our growth isn't keeping up with it, amongst other things. And to the CAO's point, there's very, very limited options for a municipality covers cost. And finally, I would say to you, the reason we have notices of motion is so that the questions that we're asking staff right now can be thought about, put into a report. So if I was looking at this, I put a notion of motion in, looking for a report about what's happening, what sources of information we're receiving, what do we need, who we're working with, and how we're going to improve the experience. And then the public gets to hear that in an organized and logical way. And we've just blown that right out the window by voting to turn down the procedural bylaw. And frankly, I think it does do the public a damn bit of good to do that. I think it was irresponsible, and I don't mind saying that. And if you take umbrage with that, I'm sorry, but it's not fair to staff because staff don't have the time to actually come forward with a logical presentation that's published a week in advance, so the public gets to read it and formulate their own opinions on what's going on. So I'll leave it at that, but I would suggest to you, oh, sorry, one other thing Councillor Cunningham mentioned, and that is a graduated approach to enforcement. I got a speeding ticket on Bayview Avenue, just down near the arena in Barrie. I was given a choice: pay the fine, come back and get education. So I went back for the education. It was interesting. I didn't learn a lot, and I paid them my whatever amount was, and they were happy, and away I went. I thought, well, that's interesting. And they'll never catch me speeding on that street again. Maybe in some other streets, I don't know, because I'm thinking about something. So, I mean, there are other options to doing this besides just saying, oh, no, shut it down. Because if you're saying to somebody, they're saying, I don't know how to do it, well, here's an opportunity to come in. So you might say, for example, first offense, and we can do this, first offense, the warning, geez, you know, you must have made a mistake here. Have a nice day. Second offense, would you please make an appointment, come in, we'll talk to you about all the options that we have, understand what your issues are. That helps us, it helps you. Third offense, maybe it's the fourth offense, I don't know. You get a fine. I guarantee you that the BIA is going to be coming to the municipality for supports outside of the actual levy that they have. They always do. We've always been accommodating. But as we get more and more pressure, we need these sorts of things to support them. And we need the information to fix the system. We need the support from the province financially because we are missing our revenue and it was built into the budget and we cannot have a deficit. So it's going to come from somewhere. And we most importantly need the forbearance of the citizens in the town of Midland whose friends run businesses down here or family. And yes, it's frustrating, but when you say to me, well, I'm mad and I'm not supporting the guy, I'm not going downtown again. You're not supporting your resident, your businesses. Believe me, you're just not. So you might consider that. And I'm sure I'm going to get some emails around that comment, but that's fine. That's just the way it is. So with that, I'll stop and let other people speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Gordon?
Thanks. So I didn't want to go first on this thing because I really wanted to let people talk about this. I think I made my point pretty clear online. Just to be extra clear, I'm not suggesting that we scrap this program. We spent like $500,000 on this. We're in a contract for a number of years where there's I don't know, 50 grand a year, whatever we pay them. This is not about, you know, buyer's remorse per se. I've been a strong advocate for user fees, pay for service, and being out there trying to champion paid parking for cost recovery. The problem with this system is that I've lost faith in it the way it's implemented right now. It's not working well. The user interface is terrible. It's not consistent. It doesn't make sense. The elderly are struggling with it, and we have a large proportion of our community that's elderly. They're not going to have apps on their smartphones. Most of them don't have data or they can answer the phone. That's about it. It's a pandemic still. It's high touch. We have to recognize that a lot of people aren't using their phone apps. We appear tone deaf. We've launched this thing You know, when downtown is struggling to recover, I know we blew a lot of money and had downtown made it. It's beautiful. But the downtown stores were the ones that were most heavily impacted by the pandemic shutdowns. Well, the big box stores got to stay open. And the argument is, oh, free parking at the big box store. Well, you know, we all know it's baked into the price of the goods. But there's been an unfair advantage given to the large businesses through no fault of our own in the municipality. We went 2 years without parking money because of the big dig in COVID. And then we put this in, you know, I get it why we did it. We put it in July and started enforcing in August. And the damage to our brand right now and how tone deaf we appear trying to help our struggling downtown and businesses is just, you know, some of us aren't going to survive this. Depending how you vote tonight, this may be your last term in office. This is a big deal. This is our Edge Hill Park, which undid some, you know, people that have been in politics in Midland for quite some time, in my opinion. Maybe Midland Police did too, but whatever. This is a big deal. This is our downtown, and the BIA, which represents our downtown, asking, begging for us to just put a pause on this thing. They're not telling us to throw it out or just make everything free and tax everybody to death to pay for the parking. All this is a pause. This conversation we're having tonight, solutioning on the fly, and to the mayor's point, that's not the purpose of you know, why I wanted this thing to come forward now. The pause allows us to give staff the opportunity a month or 2 or 3 months to do the research, not a week. As much time as they need over the winter. I would imagine we give free parking downtown at Christmas anyway. I mean, how could we not? But give them the time they need to come back with fixes and tests and a new plan of action, and let's launch this thing in the spring. I know we're going to lose a bit of income, but what we're losing right now in faith from our residents and visitors, the complaints I'm getting are even from people who don't live here going, I used to come here to shop and I'm not going to now. It's not about the dollar they got to pay. It's about the horrible implementation of this system and how unfriendly it is to use. So this isn't about the money, and I'm still a proponent of user fees, and I'm not going to suggest we get rid of free parking for an hour. That's not a temporary measure. I don't recall it being temporary. That's something we passed. If there's strings attached to that, I brain farted when I voted on that, but this is just a pause, and we'll run this thing again, and we'll launch it in round 2 properly with everything working with the right education. There's thousands and thousands of comments online. They're not going to take the time to write letters and emails and complain. The 500 that we got is not indicative of the true negative sentiment that's out there about this. And I believe it's more than 15%, Mr. CAO. There are people saying they're not going to come back to our town because of the way this is implemented, not the dollar an hour, the way this is implemented. These machines are so unfriendly. The big box stores are getting the business instead. I've been a champion of these parking fees, and I'll remain so because we need some way to recoup costs. But the way we're doing this is broken. And I don't think it's any embarrassment. It's not, it doesn't reflect negatively on the CAO or anything else, that this isn't, you know, perfect in round 1. But our seniors are struggling, people with cognitive issues are struggling, accessibility is going to be an issue this winter. You know, we need a rethink, and that's why I'm asking for a pause. The bit of money that we're going to take out of our budget for not making the money right now is going to be paid back in goodwill, and hopefully attracting people to shop at what's supposed to be the most lucrative time of the year for retailers as we come up to that point. So that's why I'm asking council to pause this, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater or abandon it completely or throw in the towel. Just put a pause, take one for the team, support our local businesses who unanimously through the BIA are begging us to do this, and, you know, live to fight another day. Let's get this thing right in round 2. That's the purpose of my motion, folks. And that's why I'm asking for the pause tonight. And that's why I wanted it tonight and not 2 weeks from now, as more and more sentiment builds and more people don't shop downtown. So thank you for approving you know, this discussion tonight, and I will ask for a recorded vote when it comes to that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Chesky.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. It's a pretty deep conversation. I didn't know that we would get this far into it, but it is what it is. So I've certainly used these parking machines many of times, and I've seen multiple people use them. My fiance and I sat at Mega Mindful Smoothies today and watched 20, 30, 40 people in and out of these parking kiosks, and we did see one person get visibly frustrated. The mayor, Mayor Strathern, saw me help another resident in the other parking lot, and it went very well. There was no frustration. There was no conflict, no need for a Facebook video exposing how crappy our system is, for lack of better terms. I think, everybody's fired up right now, and I think the world has become so polarized, and everybody's stressed out. We've had this pandemic with the anti-vaxxers and the anti-masks, and everybody's fighting everybody. And then we've had the election with the PPC party and all the liberals, and everybody's the enemy. And we're all having a really hard time getting along right now and finding unity and bond and community. And I think the Toronto Maple Leaf are now back on the ice, so it's not going to get better anytime soon. We're going to be fighting for the next few months. So, I think the last 2 times my fiance and I went downtown, the first downtown store owner we saw came and was in tears and wanted to discuss downtown matters. None of them were parking. And I did ask both of them about parking, and in the big scheme of things, it's not that big of an issue in the big, and I'll get some emails for saying that. But in the big picture, like the pandemic and the vaccine mandates and the Vax Pass and all this stuff, it's so big that it makes this look so very small, in my opinion. And as long as staff are committed to light, we're not just standing down there with a stick. Anybody who can't figure out, is getting the stick. As long as we're being, patient and calm, and we can close our eyes and think about what Midland looked like 3 years ago. And, someone would come and help you in the parking lot if you were frustrated. And when you went to the town office to pay your ticket, people were understanding and reasonable, because that's the world we lived in 3 years ago. It's not the world we live in now. And I feel it every day. I'm full of adrenaline, even saying this out loud, that we're all so full of angst right now. And this parking system, in my opinion, in the big picture, is not that big of a deal. And by pausing the system, we're not getting statistics. We're not learning how to use the system. We're not coming together as a community and teaching each other how to use this. That's what we need. We need to come together as a community, and we need to teach each other how these things work. Call me, I'll come down. There's one at the town office. Like it's in the big scheme of things, $1 isn't worth ruining anyone's day. And if you're having that hard of a time with it, come to the town and learn how to do it. I'll meet you downtown and we'll do it together. I do understand and acknowledge that there's technical issues with it, and that the customer service, I've heard from multiple people that trying to call in the customer service line is an issue. And we need to get through that together. But there's multiple other municipalities dealing with this exact same thing. And if we weren't in this pandemic, the anxiety level on this topic would not be where it is today. We wouldn't be threatening councillors saying, you're not getting back in if you don't vote for a pause on downtown parking. How inappropriate is that? Unbelievable. And the damaging Midland's brand is another thing. And 5,000 comments on Facebook are damaging our brand or damaging Midland and the downtown. It's not the people on Facebook complaining that are damaging our brand. It's the leaders of our community that aren't standing up and saying that we're working as hard as we can and we're doing the best we can. We need to be standing up and saying we're doing a great job as Midland councillors and we're doing the best we can. We show up here every other week and we vote passionately, and we're here for the residents. I answer every one of those emails and calls. Like I understand the sentiment behind this, Councillor Gordon, but like that's not what we need as a community, is to pause this parking. It gets us nowhere, absolutely nowhere. So we'll spend some money and we'll open the system back up in the spring to a bunch of frustrated people who are angry with us that we brought it back. So I support leaving the system as it is. I support, if you have an issue with the machine, if you see somebody having an issue with the machine, help them, help each other. We're a community, we're Midlanders, we're Team Midland. Remember that? Remember that feeling of Midland? Remember that, crossing people downtown and like saying hi? People downtown, the regulars downtown are incredible people. Like, I'm sure the people in the Walmart parking lot are great, but the people downtown Midland are incredible, passionate, community-minded people. And I love spending as much time down there as I can, and I'll continue to. And I'll use the parking machine, and if I fight with them, I'll take my ticket like the next guy. And I'm sorry for getting so fired up, but holy, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Cheskey. Councilor Maine?
I don't think anyone can follow that. That was amazing. That was excellent. That was a great summation of community spirit right there. The only question I had was one issue with usability, user friendliness of the system. One system that we have has a bunch of extra buttons. It has the keyboard so we can punch in your license. We have a pay by license system, and there are pay and display systems, that our vendor has. I think there's 6 machines and we have one of the 6. So just the question about the pay and display, is the vendor moving away from that? Because we still, I guess that was the first generation of these new smart parking meters. City of Toronto had those pay and displays. Is that an option? So very simplistically, you pay and you get your little printout. It still would have all the digital functionality of smartphone apps, paying digitally, wirelessly or whatever, but it just wouldn't require those extra couple of button pushes just to make it a little bit more user friendly. Or are we locked in on this particular model? Thank you.
Mr. CEO.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Ross. No, they are the model that we have is the model that most municipalities are moving to, and you're right. You can see a machine that looks quite similar, but it's a pay and display model. But then you obviously have, you know, the two-way walking. You walk to the machine and you have to walk back to the vehicle. I can appreciate that, you know, that maybe some people might be more familiar with that, but I think that type of technology will soon be left behind. And I think the advantages that this technology offers with a workable app, with the ability for people to never even go to a terminal, to pay for the, I pay for my parking before I go to some of my favorite stores downtown. And because I know there'll be a parking spot right by, you know, my favorite fishing store. And so I never go to a terminal. I walk that street, you know, as Cody said, I walk that street constantly. And I talk to all their businesses about how their businesses are doing. And I get very positive feedback about the revitalization of the town. Yes, I do see some frustration with the parking system, but I also test it every time I work. I've got more parking receipts than I know what to do with, because I want to make sure that I get an accurate feel for it. So I do appreciate some people are struggling. And, you know, hopefully to offer Councilor Olszewski some, you know, positive, I see tremendous amount of people helping other people, you know, just trying to figure out some of the basic transactions because they are intimidated. And some of them give up easily because it's a public space and they're embarrassed by it. That's why we offer the public or the private, you know, option at our town. I think the point, and I think we're all in agreement on this, is we need the information. We need the information. It can't just, you know, appear on Facebook without letting us know what's wrong. And it has to be good information. You can vent if you like, but please tell us what the problem is, you know, and we are not tone deaf by any means. We've got an excellent team who is at the town. Angela's helping them, Jim is helping them, our vendor is helping to understand what those specific issues are. But we should expect there's going to be some issues in a community that's just learning something new, and we have to work our way through it. If we pause, we can't work our way through it. And like you, I have a tremendous amount of confidence in Midlanders to adjust to this and the benefits that it will provide to our town and business. That was the reason behind, you know, council approving this type of a system. And it's absolutely necessary. You've seen it in the budget deliberations. You're going to see it again through this budget deliberations. You need some financial capabilities to deliver everything this community needs and wants.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO. Follow-up, Councilor Mean?
Yeah, just a quick point. I had one BIA business owner said that she found it very helpful going to the town's website, midland.ca/parking, and pulling up the how-to instruction guide, which is on there. And that now is also, I believe it's been printed out and taped to the side of all the terminals. So if you are going downtown, or you know somebody that is coming to downtown and they're going to be using the system for the first time, just to read through the instructions. Is very simple, 1 to 6 step. If you're going to be paying at the terminal, some people have found that to be very useful. Other people are still struggling with the machine. So I just wanted to make a comment, midland.ca/parking, and take a look.
Thank you very much, Councilor Main. I wonder if I could, I'm going to pass the chair to you. I have a comment to make. I also have Councilor McGinn and Councilor Cunningham who would like to speak a second time. But if I could, I'm going to go ahead and speak first. I can hand the chair over to you, sir.
You're talking to me? Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Thank you.
All right.
All right.
Deputy Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I heard earlier today earlier in this meeting that council's reputation is being damaged. And I can promise you that our reputation is being far more damaged by the Facebook posts and Twitter accounts, much more than any parking meter. I guess council has decided to throw the code of conduct completely out the window. Has there been problems with the parking system? No question. Anybody who does online banking, when this pandemic started, go by and talk to your banker. People adapted. They had the same growing pains, same issues. People had to move from visiting their banks because they weren't allowed to walk in the door, to use the terminals, go online, and etc. So are we alone? We're not. No question, adopting to new technologies is hard, especially as we get older. Life has been tough over the pandemic. People are angry, more angry than I ever realized. But if council, the leaders of this community, are not moving forward a positive message, how can we expect our residents to? By delaying this issue, it doesn't make it go away. The only time you'll never make a mistake is when you do nothing. As much as I believe we have to correct the wrongs with the town staff, correct the wrongs, which town staff are working tirelessly to do, at some point we need to move this discussion to solutions and stop dwelling on the problems. Mistakes happen. Let's work on a solution. The solution is education, education with the terminals, and education with the app. The solution is definitely not to stop shopping downtown. Hundreds, maybe thousands of community across North America use the same parking system, including Niagara-on-the-Lake and Tobermory, who get over 500,000 visitors per year to their communities. And they don't seem to have any problem with implementing this. It's the industry leader, and I'm confident that Midland can do it. Are there growing pains with change? There sure are. But I have more than faith in the people of Midland that we can do this together. And by working and putting that positive message out there, we can do this together. We can help our neighbors. We can make this a positive spin and come up with a solution instead of dwelling on a problem. And I encourage everybody in this room, everyone in the town of Midland, when you see someone struggling, if you know how to work this this parking system, please go help them and encourage the great attitude that people of Midland have always and will continue to have. So I appreciate the time to discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Councilor McGinn, did you have a comment? Were you next on the queue?
I believe so.
We've had extensive discussion about this. Is there anyone that would like to have any further comment? Councilor Prost. Okay, so Councilor McGinn, we'll go to Councilor Prost and Councilor Cunningham. And then I think we're going to draw to a conclusion on this motion. Councilor McGinn.
So I have a question. And this is something I think we really need to speak about, is that if we're talking about making modifications to the screens and to having dark mode, light mode, and to changing font size and actual font, we need to pause because we need to bring it to the Accessibility Advisory Committee, because we need to make sure that we are being accessibility. We need to make sure that we're being AODA compliant with any of the changes that have been proposed here and we have been told are happening moving forward. I wouldn't want to find ourselves in a situation where it comes to light that the machines are not compliant. I'd like to make sure, to echo a lot of what I'm hearing, that we do it right, that we are moving forward absolutely appropriately. I support, the first, and I don't really want to call it offense. That's such a heavy word. The first, it is what it is. Where it's a, hey, you know what? Okay, so something possibly happened. And then the second one, the second one going, okay, you know what? You had your first go, you had your first chance, and here's, and on that saying, here's somewhere that you can go for more information. Not all people, and depending on what the weather is like, they're not always, things do deteriorate. We have to be mindful of the fact that that there are a lot of people who are not going to use the app. We have a high number of seniors who live in our region, they're not going to use the app. So that is not going to be a solution for all people. So education, we can put something in the tax notices. This has come up before when for other issues. It's a way that you're getting it into the home. I agree, Councillor Rashevsky, I agree. There has been a lot of frustration for a lot of people. I fully hear you. I validate what you're saying. I've felt it too. I am one of the people who put up one Facebook post. If you'll note, my Facebook post also had them talking about how positive it was, how they liked Midland. So mine was not just, this is horrible, this is absolute, don't come here. And it was, we're going to work on this. We are working together. We are helping. I think it's fantastic that you would suggest, that people ask you for assistance. That's kind of you. We all do that. Right now, we are Team Midland because we are talking about this. We are. I look at you all and you're all team members here. You've brought different perspectives, which is fantastic. We all have varying backgrounds and varying experiences. So thank you. Thank you for having the courage to be passionate about how you feel on this. I cannot ignore what I have heard, what I have read in emails. I can't ignore the experiences that I personally have had. Prior to living here, I was in Oakville. I worked in Toronto, and if I recall correctly, it was the same system. They had it longer. Honest to goodness, if I had grief in Toronto, I wasn't as level-headed then. So I probably would have been using some very, very strong words, and it would have negatively impacted my workday. And then that would have been negatively impacted my family time. I believe we can still pause and work on the solutions. Why do we need to have more negative information? We already have enough so that we're all talking about it and we're all worrying about it. So let's get over worrying about it, take the pause, and fix and find the solutions. We have the opportunity now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn. I just want to share with you a comment somebody made to me yesterday. They suggested that we take our new parking meters and put them in the new county waste bins. And that was the best thing I heard yesterday. So to Councillor Prost, you had a comment?
I do. So much has been said. I support the pause. I think our job is to listen to the residents, listen to our staff, and work together. Sometimes I feel coming into a meeting, I'm walking into a war zone. We need to work better together. I don't understand it. It's not about you and me and this person and that person. It's about our residents and our staff. We need a healthy balance to keep this town going. And it's frustrating because we can't fix everything, not any one of us. But we can do the best we can. And that's what I'd like us to do. It's not about what Councillor Gordon's motion is and, oh, we're going to be against it, or what maybe Councillor Olszewski wants, oh, we might be against it or we might be for it. It's not about that. It's about what's best for the people of this town and what the town needs to keep going. We do need money to make it work, but we also need to listen to our residents. And quite frankly, I don't feel that it's right that as a councillor of the town of Midland, I feel like I'm walking into a war zone when I walk into a meeting, even online. It's not a good feeling. And I can't believe that either one of you don't even feel a little bit of that, because it's there and it shouldn't be there. And I apologize if I'm out of line, but I had to say it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prost. Councillor Cunningham?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly see that we have many different perspectives and certainly lots of feelings in the room. When we get down to what will work for our residents, we have some different opinions on that. And we also have some data that help us see how people get through this. If I thought that putting a pause on would make a significant change to the system that we have, and that we would reboot it as something significantly different and have current data that would prove it would work, that would make sense. But I really want to thank Mr. CAO and Mr. Reicheld. This is not new. They have been working on this for 2 months. They have been listening. And I know it can feel to the residents like we're not listening, but if you could hear the discussions that don't even hit the council table, every single councillor is concerned with the parking system, concerned with how it's impacting people, and what would be the best way to make it better. The 2 months that have already gone into this have seen lots of data come in and improvements being made. And I'm quite sure that the company is probably keeping AODA compliant, because I suspect their daily fine would be even bigger than ours. But that's a good question to ask them, if there are even settings that could break AODA compliance for their machines. Do we need to pause to do that? I don't think so. We're not going to pause and come back to a whole new system. It's going to be this system. This is the system we have. And I think if we pause to make the tweaks and adjustments, it's a little bit of an easy way out and a short-term solution that's going to lead us to longer, deeper pain, because then when we relaunch and it's the same darn system with some tweaks that make it easier to use and easier to read, it's still going to be hard to adjust to, which is why I don't support the pause. It will not do anything significant, and it will rob us of the opportunity to see, does black on white work better? How will we know if we aren't testing it? Do we get all the machines up and running? Jim, if you can, Mr. Reicheld, if you can get that app onto the website as soon as we do have access to it for those people who have iPhones and would like to be able to use it. And those are the things that we are making progressive changes to. And maybe some updates on engaging Midland that show, here's how we tweaked, here's the results. A little bit more communication there so people do know you are being listened to. We all are struggling with this, and there is not going to be a result tomorrow or 2 months from now or 4 months from now that gives us a parking system that people look at and go, well, that was a breeze. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I guess it is probably worthwhile following up with Chair Stat of the Accessibility Committee on their comments on the accessibility of the machines. Things like color blindness is something you never even think about because most people aren't colorblind. But that's a consideration that our accessibility always looks at all the different perspectives. With the extensive discussion that we've had, we've also have a request for a recorded vote. As I see no additional comments, Madam Chair, Sherry, if you, Ms. Edgar, if you could call a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Council, you've heard the question. When I call your name, please answer yes or no. Councillor McGinn. Councillor Olszewski.
No.
Deputy Mayor Ross.
Nope.
Councillor Gordon.
Yes.
Councillor Downer.
No.
Councillor Prost.
Yes.
Councillor Main.
No.
Councillor Cunningham.
No.
And Mayor Strathern.
No.
The motion is defeated 6-3.
I want to thank everyone for the incredibly informative discussion. And with that, I'll pass the chair back to Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Main, and I too want to thank everyone for the discussion. Greatly appreciated. We'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is general announcements. Anybody have a general announcement to bring forward this evening? Councillor Gordon?
Thanks. I got a couple. And just, also thanks for entertaining that discussion tonight and not delaying it for 2 weeks. I really needed it to happen. So I appreciate that. I thank all my peers. The announcement, there's a couple. One is that the town's budget survey is now live on the Town of Midland site. For those who follow me online, I launched a survey as well before the towns launched theirs. I got about 75 responses and some really good content. And I'll be sharing that with the municipality as well, so they can use that to help guide them. And I'll share it with my peers. But But for heaven's sake, please use the Town of Midland's official survey, even if you've filled mine out. It's very important that you complete the town's because it's the town's official one. So you can visit that. I have a link on my survey page to the towns, but you can also go to midland.ca and complete that budget 2022 survey. The second one is today was the official unveiling of our brand new Rainbow Crosswalk at First and Bay. And a lot of us were able to get there, not everybody, because it's during the day and some of us have to work. But it was awesome to be part of that. And it really, it got me thinking, not just today, but it just resonated the fact that there's other ways we can show off our pride and our heritage in Midland. And I mean our pride in Midland as well. Not just pride in the sense of this Rainbow Crosswalk. So my ask here is that I'd like to hear from residents about the concept that I floated previously, but never formalized, of cultural corners at King and Elizabeth. That could be the home of 4 painted crosswalks that would help honor our Métis and Indigenous heritage, as well as our veterans, and could also be a relocated home of our new Rainbow Crosswalk as it wears out and needs replacing. Given the budget constraints, I'm not sure whether this is something realistically that I can pitch and happen in 2022, but it could be a project for the next council in 2023. So I would like to get some input from residents about this idea. If you'd like to have more information or talk about this, I'll have it on my site, my billgordon.ca website or my Facebook page. And let's start solutioning and thinking about what cultural corners could look like in our beautiful revitalized downtown. Those are my 2 announcements. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Wonderful. Another announcement, Councillor Cunningham.
Yes, thank you. I see I'm actually been unmuted for a while here. I hope I wasn't making funny sounds. So I love to celebrate collaboration. I love to celebrate support for our small businesses. So I want to let you know that our Cultural Alliance, in partnership with our Chamber of Commerce, are running a speaker series all during October, which is Small Business Month. Every Tuesday evening on Zoom, you have an opportunity to learn some actionable things. We have coming up still, learn to make videos for yourself to promote your business, your products. We have a social media training coming up, and also Etsy stores. So these are by local business people in anywhere in the Simcoe County area who have some wisdom to share with you. You can go to the Chamber of Commerce to find out how to register for these free events, and absolutely fantastic speakers taking part in them. Another piece of collaboration that I want to share with you is there is an event coming up on October 14th. So I'll be missing one of the special meetings of council because I'm one of the hosts of a meeting to start envisioning an age-friendly North Simcoe. Every single one of our municipalities has done an age-friendly study and have got your feedback. And again, in the spirit of listening, we have these plans that we don't want to see sit on a shelf gathering dust, but plans that we would like to see activated. And we don't want to sit as municipalities saying we're going to be the source of all things or it's not going to happen. So we're doing some pretty cool things. The Midland Seniors Council has partnered with the North Simcoe Ontario Health Team, whose first year mandate, which started October 1st, is to make health and wellness of seniors their prime first year concern. So they are putting that into action by hosting this event, bringing in Age-Friendly Ontario speaker Lisa Brancaccio and Dominique, whose last name I can't recall, from the Niagara collaboration of age-friendly communities. It's going to be quite a significant event, October 14th at 1 o'clock. We are looking for all stakeholders, all people who are engaged in making our communities throughout North Simcoe more age-friendly. If you would like an invitation, you can email me directly, ccunningham@midland.ca, or you can reach out to our, well, you know what, do that. I'm just thinking I don't have, our North Simcoe Ontario Health Team is a harder place to find. Or call the town and we'll figure out how to get you that invite. This is a really exciting place to envision a working group. The working group will come back to councils with the proposal. So it's very, very early stages and an exciting time to be part of it.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Main?
Thank you. Yeah, we want to welcome the new executive director to the Midland Cultural Center, which has or is reopening soon, which is just amazing. So there'll be there'll be some live theater resuming, as well as some amazing art galleries as always. I did want to expand upon Councillor Gordon's point about the Pride Crosswalk. It has been overwhelmingly positive, but for some people, it has brought up past trauma. And so I wanted to mention that if you are a person who's been a victim of hate crimes, violence, and you are under the LGBT banner, the Canadian Mental Health Association has put together resources for people and family members. There's Rainbow Health Ontario. Obviously, there's the Kids Help Phone, but there is also a lesbian, gay, bi, trans youth line, as well as an organization called Parents, Friends of Lesbians and Gays, pflagcanada.ca. So this is a perfect opportunity to have that conversation and continue to talk about how we can end hate in our community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Main. Mayor Strathern.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Two things. I was to attend an awards presentation last night for the youth group known as LEOs, where they're the youth group for the Lions. The presentation was 2 members of that group were awarded Duke of Edinburgh Awards, and that is quite an accomplishment. I don't have their names, but I would like to, hopefully on behalf of council, to congratulate those 2 people. It is certainly, it's an amazing program to actually be able to get the bronze, silver, or gold acknowledgement is very, very meaningful, and typically it's life-changing for people. So congratulations to them. Also, you'll notice behind Mr. Deneau, the CAO, Brian's Fire Station. You might all be wondering what that is. That's a cake that was part of a celebration today of a gift by a man named Brian Williams, who's lived a large portion of his life with CLH and has a fascination with all things emergency, EMS, fire, police. And Mr. Corvo of the Midland Fire, the fire safety officer for the Midland Fire Department, arranged for Brian to go down to the fire hall. And it's made such an impression on Mr. Williams that he made a donation, a significant donation to the fire hall and it was then used to create a fire safety training exhibit with ancillary pieces for young people to come down to the fire hall as we get past this COVID thing and learn about fire safety. And so it's almost in a sense of immortality, because not only he continues to save lives and his life is recognized through his contributions. So I would just like to say it was quite an emotional event. We had the chief just about in tears. Mr. Corbo was just about in tears. Half the audience was in tears. And I would just like to acknowledge that contribution to the community by Mr. Williams. So thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Great news. Always great to hear another great resident in the town of Midland. Any other announcements today? Councillor Olszewski.
Just a quick one. Just had a email from a resident that heard my rant and wants some training on the downtown parking system. So tomorrow morning at 10:30, if anybody wants to come downtown and hit up the parking system, let's do this. Email me, text me, whatever you want to do. 10:30 in the morning, we'll be downtown at the library.
Good for you. Good for you, Councillor Olszewski. And any other announcements? I'd just like to echo Councillor Gordon and Councillor Main and everybody who attended this morning with the Pride Sidewalk. It was a great event, and thank you to all the staff for all the hard work. Yes, there you go. Thank you. And yeah, for all the staff for their shutting down the streets and making it safe. And no, it was a great day. And also, I'd like to pass along a happy Thanksgiving. It's hard to believe it's Thanksgiving weekend, but happy Thanksgiving to everybody in our community. So have a safe and happy holiday. Next up, we have to move out of this committee of the whole, moved by Councillor Main, second by Councillor Olszewski, that the committee of the whole rise and report. All those in favor? So carried, your worship, it's all yours.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Next, we have a move by Councillor Gordon, seconded by Councillor McGinn, that the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole for the meeting of October 6th, 2021 be adopted as resolutions of Council. Comments or questions with respect to the motion from Council? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you, that carries. That takes us to the motions for which notice was given, a portion of the meeting. Councillor Prost, as you heard at the outset, has withdrawn the notice of motion, and I think it will be coming back, if I'm not mistaken, Councillor Prost. Thank you for that. Next, we have item 15.2, which is a motion for which notice was given from Councillor Gordon, which states that the now vacant legal senior management position recruitment be postponed pending review during the 2022 budget deliberations. That's the motion. I need a seconder to get it on the floor, please. Councillor Olszewski. Thank you. Councillor Gordon.
Maybe I should start with perhaps rumors of Ms. Lococo's departure have been greatly exaggerated because she appears to be dialed into our meeting. And I thought that she had vacated that position. So before we start talking about a vacant position that may not be vacant, can someone give me some clarity?
Mr. CAO.
Ms. Lococo is still here.
Thank you.
So do we or do we not have a vacant senior management position?
We
that
do
we're
not.
recruiting for?
I'm sorry. We are going to start recruiting. Yes, she's given us her notice for the end of the month.
Okay, fair enough. So this is a little bit weird. I mean, this is not a reflection on Ms. Lococo. What we're talking about here is a position that she happens to hold that she's given her notices on. So, I mean, the motion's pretty clear. It's being vacated. Perhaps I should use that language. And I'm suggesting that we postpone recruitment pending the budget 2022 deliberations, which start early December, to see whether A, we can afford this, whether B, we should replace this position and perhaps use outsourced legal counsel. And we have a plethora of qualified legal practitioners in our local area. And also to discuss whether this role is still needed. So I'm not trying to downplay or minimize her role and what she's done for us. But this position in itself, I think, behooves us as we enter so closely into budget to have a good look at it before we just fill it again with another body. So that's the motion.
Mr. May. Thank you, Councillor Gordon.
Thank you, Your Worship. Well, first of all, we don't have a senior legal manager. We have an executive director of corporate services. And so we have 3 executive directors. That's the way the corporate structure has been laid out. What we do have in just under 12 months' time will be another municipal election. We have upcoming bylaws that will need to be passed, updated. I mean, we're even talking about parking updates, a whole bunch of variety of bylaws and governance issues that we are working on, that it would not be advisable for us to not fill the executive director position. Amanpreet Sidhu was an excellent executive director of corporate services, our first. Tina Lococo has followed his lead very well. And so I don't think this would be a good move for Midland to not hire an executive director when we only have 3. Thank you.
Councillor Cunningham. Thank you, Councillor May.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The structure of our staffing is something that has been underway, the restructuring of the Town of Midland staffing in order to provide the senior management positions that also then allow multiple levels so that we have a more robust management team that is a wonderful process that has been gone through, examined. Our CAO has been instrumental in creating a team that allows him to make the changes that we've requested of him in the town with our strategic vision, with our service delivery review, with our regional service delivery review, and with the changes that need to happen to decide that if a position becomes vacant, it should come back to the budget table. I don't know how on earth we would attract staff if that became a process or a policy that we started to follow. I don't know where this comes from. I know that the position of this executive director is valuable and goes much beyond legal, and is one of those top 3 positions that make it possible for us to move forward. So I don't support this motion, and I strongly want to just on the record say we value our senior leadership team. We value our staff, and our desire to support you, to train you, and to appreciate you is heartfelt. And I sincerely hope that we put our money where our mouth is on that. If you're considering applying for this senior leadership position, our team is incredibly growth oriented. We are looking to advance this town with wisdom and within a budget and to the best of our ability. And you would be an excellent addition to this team, supported by staff and council in the endeavors that you partner with your other senior leadership team and our CAO to achieve. This in no way reflects on how we feel about our staff. We truly appreciate the ways that Tina has safeguarded the town, the way she's highlighted ways to work more efficiently, more effectively, the things that she has discovered that will make us a stronger organization, and that should you choose to come aboard the town of Midland to continue this work, it's an exciting position and you will be very busy.
Thank you, Councillor. I saw Mr. Deneau. Mr. Deneau.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And yes, obviously, I think this is, a responsibility that, we'll continue to look to fulfill, and we will recruit. And, to Councillor Cunningham's point, people do pay attention to what happens during council meetings when they're considering where they want to work. And, this kind of suggestion, frankly, doesn't help. I want to remind council through the budget process that, the administration committed $400,000 in savings through salary gapping. $400,000 in savings. There's a lot of discussion about a 0% budget, but nothing offered. We offered $400,000 in savings, and we will achieve that. We will achieve that thanks to the leadership of people like Tina. I'll certainly speak to Tina and her accomplishments and what she gave, to the town, just prior to she leaves. I've got a tremendous amount of respect for Tina professionally and what she has done. And she has certainly put us in a much better position, with her tenure here. And I want to thank her for allowing us, some time to transition. And I know she'll be there for us if we need her, whenever we need her. She's just that kind of person, and she's that committed to this team. So yes, we need to replace Tina. She is not only a town solicitor, she looks after the clerks who handle the communication between the public and council and the administration. That's a very important role. She handles finance, the process that is going to deliver the budget. Tina helps steer that with our CFO. She handles IT, which handles the whole security aspect of this organization. She handles procurement. If you want to talk about an area that is vital to an organization now, helping Kim steer through, the intricacies of procurement and make sure we are doing that in a legal manner is extremely important. She handles the risk profile of this organization in terms of, the insurance and claims process that happens. And trust me, it's a very litigious environment right now, as I think all of you know. She handles culture and events for this community, which we all appreciate, but it needs guidance, from someone. And she has certainly provided that to that team and helped them have certainly much more confidence and understanding how to lead themselves. So yes, we need to replace someone in this capacity. It is absolutely vital. I don't know how you're going to I don't know how we'll find someone who can replace Tina, but we're going to try. And certainly as Councillor Cunningham, we're going to sell all the great aspects about Midland and what we're doing to continue to make it, I think, the best place on the best harbor in Georgian Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Deneau. Councillor McGinn, you wish to speak, please?
I don't think anybody was suggesting that what Ms. Lococo did in the role that she, that she fills is anything less than just extraordinary. So thank you for being with us. Sorry to see you go. And I wish you best in your next endeavors. Really, I do. You will be missed. And I agree that I agree with Mr. CAO that I would love for us all to be saying, yeah, we see that you're watching, and what we're doing moving forward is going to have us be people who are going to retain high quality, driven and invested employees. And that the position that is going to be vacated is extremely important. I do understand and I respect that, there are positions of great responsibility and also authority, and therefore there is a pay grid that needs to be followed. On that, I'm wondering if we can, again, have a gap because everywhere is struggling. There are people who are in positions below Ms. Lococo, see if any of them are capable of perhaps, being a junior, because that is something that our organization supports, which is growth from within. Those junior positions are at a lower pay grade. I understand the concern about having the corporation at risk. Ms. Lococo doesn't do it alone. I understand, there's been many references to, to the water, and she's at the helm. I get it. A gap would be, I believe, could potentially be a good idea. And thank you. Yes, I remember the savings that were found, and I appreciate the work that was put into that. Let's see if we can do it again, starting now. We don't have to jump. We do have budget coming up, and let's see if there is perhaps a restructuring or have a conversation about how we can have people who are up and coming come into and grow with the organization, because there have been a lot of changes. There are a lot of people that are in the community who could assist us. We are not just the people who are speaking here. I'm speaking on behalf of residents and others, and our collective wisdom comes from the community that is behind us. So I would like us to consider not just filling a position, but looking at a different way to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McGinn. Councillor Gordon.
Thanks. I really didn't want this to be about Ms. Lococo. This isn't about her or accomplishments or anything like that. This is because that would be completely inappropriate. And even this kind of discussion about a staff member should be happening in camera if we're going to talk about pros and cons and whatnot of a staff member. This is just about a position. So, I mean, while I appreciate clearly we're having this publicly discussed, this is probably quite awkward for Ms. Lococo, and for that I apologize wholeheartedly. This is really about talking about the position, the successive filling of this position. So my only suggestion is that, we're faced with, we've given a marching order of 3.5% tax increase that staff's going to use to come back to us. I suspect there's going to be, a lot of chopping and hacking that's going to go on to try and get us down to below 3.5, and a senior management position that could be filled, being comfortable and nice to be able to fill it with another equally capable person. But we need to look at money. We need to look at the cost to the ratepayers. Like, that's the whole reason I'm talking about this position. It's nothing to do with Ms. Lococo. It's about this vacant or soon to be vacant position the expense, and who else in our organization can we use, or how can we outsource some of this and accomplish the same things and take a bit of a hit off the taxpayer? We're going to need to save money because we still need to deliver services. And, you know, we're coming into budget season, and here we have a very senior position with a, you know, high six-figure salary plus benefits that's being vacated. And I'm simply suggesting we take a breath, don't immediately rush to fill it, wait for a couple of months when we talk about this at budget time, and then we can decide. That's all I'm suggesting here. So it's unfortunate this has turned into like a roast or the platitudes that are being flying around here. This feels like it just is weird and awkward, because I would never do this with a staff member while they're dialed into the meeting in a public meeting. So anyway, this is about a position, not a person. And that's the way this should have been, but turned out into something weird. So.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Your Mayor. The clarity on Tina's position was because she was referred to as a senior legal person, and I wanted to be very clear. It is much more than that. And this is not a part-time job or a job that can be filled by someone filling in on a volunteer basis. That is not what this job can accomplish. If you want to outsource it just for the legal portion alone, you're at a minimum starting at $500 an hour. It could be up to $1,000 an hour. So the financial business case to replace somebody in that capacity falls apart very quickly. You know, it's the caliber of the person, and I'd say this for the entire executive team, the caliber of the people that we have, we're very fortunate to have. And they're here because they really want to help Midland be successful. All of them can go somewhere else and earn more money. No question, but they want to be here. That is why they are here. And I'm very grateful that they are here and helping our leadership team grow into their roles, because that is the sustainable model we want to put in place. I absolutely agree with Councillor McGinn. Let's help some people grow into their roles. And you're seeing that with some of the announcements we're making. You're seeing people grow into those roles because we're giving them the opportunity to learn. We're giving them confidence. We're taking them through, you know, the process of becoming good leaders for this town. They will be leading this town, I think, very soon. But we need strong leadership in these roles, people who want to be here to help fix the situation. Because as we said, this is a serious situation, but we have a way through it. There has been some very good strategic decisions made by this council and previous councils on some things we're doing. We have limited financial capabilities, but with some very good decisions and discipline, we can get through this. And we can really make Midland the special place that it is. So I'm looking forward to that, but we absolutely need somebody in this capacity, and it is very cost effective, and it is very responsible to the taxpayers.
Thank you, Mr. Deneau. Questions or comments from council? Seeing none, I would like to turn the chair over to Deputy Mayor Ross, because I'd like to speak to this matter. Deputy Mayor.
Please.
Thank
you.
you.
Happy to. Thank you, Your Worship. Go right ahead.
So we've made decisions for what we feel will be a effective organization, and its structure. And having made those decisions, we've instructed the CAO to implement that organization and policies that help that organization to function. He's gone out and recruited some pretty first-rate people to occupy the chairs within the executive director level. This is not, as he's pointed out, just a legal senior management position. It's one aspect of it. One that we've talked about risk, for example. So risk is one of those things where we're looking at 2.5 to 3, perhaps even 3.5% on the budget through insurance and suits and so on. This person is responsible for that. And she has made recommendations to deal with the position, the person in the position. I'm not talking about the individual now. This is the role of this individual. This individual is, as the CAO has pointed out, is a multifaceted position. I think importantly, we've got a level of people who provide mentorship for those people who are coming up through the organization and bring a perspective. If I look at I'm going to use Mr. Campbell as an example. I hope he doesn't mind, but he has a wealth of experience in municipal, NGO, and private side, and he's imparting that knowledge in terms of organizational structure, leadership skills, and so on. And we're seeing the span of control and operations becoming more manageable, falling within acceptable limits, and we're seeing performance as a consequence change there. We're also seeing, I would suggest to you, morale change because we're getting some stability. And but one of the things that is really hurting this organization is churn and or turnover. We saw that particularly in the planning function, and there were great reasons for people to do the things that they did, but that left us in a place where, for example, we're now in November going to be dealing with a non-decision. That's simply because people weren't here, couldn't deal with the issue. And there were people here who could approach it, but they couldn't deal with it in a senior capacity with the people who are in question. We have, as a result, put the senior leadership team and a lot of other people under a lot of stress. Extra time being put in, you don't see it, but it's there, filling in the gaps. And to sit here and think that we can just sort of, well, we won't bother to hire, there's no implication. There is. It's strain on staff. It's things get put aside in order to deal with issues that are welling up from the vacant position. And finally, I would just say that this isn't in our laneway. This is in the laneway of the CAO. It's not the council's business. If you want to take a look at structural organization, then you should sit down and say to the CAO, we'd like to review structural organization and have a meeting around it. We're talking a budget matter here. So when we get to budget, we can have a conversation about how we're going to spend money and so on. But here we have a person who reports to CAO, not to us. We've given the CAO the ability to run the organization. I think they're doing a pretty good job, frankly. And so I would just ask the council to consider that as we vote on this, and to understand, frankly, as I say, it's not in our laneway. So I'm not going to support this. I think that you have, as the CEO said in another context here this evening, you lose one person, it has a significant ripple effect through the organization. We're being asked as an organization, rather the CAO and the corporation staff are being asked to take on more and more and more. And so with that, I'm not going to support this. No. Somebody has their hand up, apparently. Madam Clerk, do you have your hand up? Sorry.
Nope, I think we're all right. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank
Any
you.
Any other questions or comments with regards to this item? Councillor McGinn?
I'm really worried. I'm really worried because we're talking about the position that Ms. Coco currently has. I admit that I spoke her name. And I'm really worried that we're approaching a line where we're not supposed to be discussing, we're not supposed to discuss the person. I mentioned pay. I'm wondering if I can ask Madam Clerk if we have to entirely stop this conversation on this motion.
I think, Madam Clerk, I think we're all right, but you have any comment?
I would just perhaps ask that our CAO answer that question. We shouldn't really be getting into the personal details.
Yeah, I think we're gonna stop the conversation and call the vote. Mr. CEO, last comment.
I'm comfortable with the conversation that happened. There was no references to Tina and certainly Tina's performance.
Wonderful.
I think we all certainly appreciate her contributions. This was about the role. As we said, we wanted to be clear on what that role was. So there's some clarity provided on exactly what the role was and what the implications were of, pressing pause on that role until the budget occurs. So I think that clarity was required for this to be considered.
Thank you very much, Mr. CEO, and thank you, Councilor McGinn. It always is good to side on the edge on the side of caution. So I appreciate you bringing that up, and I will call the vote. All those in favor of this motion? Sorry, could I hold your cards up again? All those in favor? I see 2. Okay, all those opposed? All right, this is defeated. Your worship, I'll turn it back to you. Vote was defeated.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The next item is again a motion proposed by Councillor Gordon. Earlier in the evening, we had a conversation around COVID and the CAO. I asked the CAO rather, if he would be prepared to bring a report forward to council next meeting dealing with porting the corporate vaccine passport policy to include council boards and committees. So I'm just wondering, Councillor Gordon, do you want to continue to move forward with this, or can we leave it at that? We'll wait for next meeting to see what they bring forward.
I think given the fact that the town has now adopted, or just about adopted, a policy that presumably is the one that's like Penetang machines, and I'm guessing Tiny and Tay, they were all working together, which is great, fantastic. And it appears from what I read in the news about Penetangs that it's a replica model of the health unit, who we've been supportive of all along, and following their advice. So why would we pivot now? That's great. So then really my only concern, and I spoke to the mayor about this earlier, and he just alluded to it, so it's perfect, is that that's all well and good that the town will have a policy for our staff, but it doesn't impact council boards or committees. So I was going to change my motions wording so that we would, commit to following suit with our staff to make sure that we, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So I'm content to, I don't know what we do with this one, and vote it down or just abandon it, don't speak to it, whatever has to happen procedurally. And I'll wait to the 20th when we get the CAO presenting the staff policy to us. And then I will, I assume there'll be some kind of ask or something from the town that council adopt this for ourselves, as well as boards, committees and whatnot. So we're all on the same playing field, with the same constraints, and we're not special.
Of course you're special. Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, I know. So, so the process would be that I will ask council to relinquish the motion. If they will do so, then we'll see it come up as a report from staff. Mr. CAO, am I correct on that? That you'll be that we'll have a report next on the 20th, I believe it is.
Yes, that's correct, Your Worship. We'll take a look at the policy. We want to make sure that it certainly meets what we feel would be the needs of council, committee, and board. So if there's any modifications, they'll be included in that. I would say to Councillor Gordon's, pay attention to what the details of each municipal policy is. I don't think they're all carbon copies. There's certain unique aspects to every municipality that need to be considered. So I wouldn't assume they're all the same.
Madam Clerk, the process,
Sorry, just one quick follow-up then. I guess my only concern, and it may be shared by others amongst my peers here, is that make sure that our policy doesn't have us firing staff for not, being vaccinated. I want to make sure we have the leniency that the county has shown and that the health unit has recommended, that we see echoed, in countless other municipalities. To your point, how valuable our staff are. I want to make sure we're not taking a punitive approach on this. People can make choices and have consequences, but they shouldn't have to lose their jobs. So I'm hoping that's a factor.
So just so we're clear, so let's just, before I get into this, Madam Clerk, did you want to speak to something here?
Sure. I just wanted to mention that if Councillor Gordon, if you'd like to withdraw your motion, all you have to do is you request that you withdraw the motion, and council, if they approve it, then the motion is withdrawn. That was the process.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So just so we're clear about this too, the issue of vaccine passports, and it's a health and safety policy and process within the purview of the HR health safety group overseen by the CAO. It's a staff issue. It's not a council issue. But when we get to council, it is a council issue. So I would think that this report coming forward from the CAO, we'll see, we'll have a week to go through it. We'll have some inputs from our the staff in terms of how they feel about it. That helps to guide us in terms of how we might feel about it. And so I thank you, Councillor Gordon. You've indicated that you would like to withdraw the motion. So I'll ask council by way of vote, will we relinquish the motion from the floor? So with that, all in the affirmative, please. Thank you. So the motion is withdrawn. Thank you, Councillor Gordon. I look forward to hearing from staff on the 20th. So I believe we have moved to a point where we're looking at a motion moved by Deputy Mayor Ross, seconded by Councillor Main, that bylaw 2021-43 being a bylaw to adopt the proceedings of the regular council meeting held October 6, 2021, be passed and enacted. Comments or questions from council? Seeing none, all those in favor? That carries. Thank you very much. And finally, motion of the evening, moved by Councillor Pro, seconded by Deputy Mayor Ross, that this regular meeting of council adjourn at 22:04 p.m. All those in favor? Thank you again, council. It's been an interesting evening, interesting conversation as always, and looking forward to the 20th.